evening. Welcome to the Board of Commissioners special called meeting, May 15. May 15. 2017. This time I would please ask our City Clerk Sherry Gurdon to have a roll call.
Commissioner Jay Vallada.
Here.
Commissioner Larry Conder.
Here.
Mayor Tom Watson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Bob Glenn.
Here.
Commissioner Pam Smith-Wright.
Here.
Thank you. This time we'll have the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Please pray with me in the manner that you're most comfortable. O loving and gracious Lord, we come before you tonight to do the business of our wonderful community. Ask that you guide us tonight with kindness and respect for each other as we decide which bridge to cross and which bridge to burn, knowing full well that everyone's heart is in the right place, and that no one here tonight has anything but the best interest of our citizens and our community. We pray in thanksgiving for all that we have, and we ask that you put your hand on the shoulder of all that protect us as they encounter danger today. We ask all of this and whatever may be in your heart. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, staff. Thanks for y'all for showing up tonight. Nice, quiet, little non-controversial meeting. Glad to have you all here tonight. At this time, I'm going to have a proclamation for Historic Preservation Month. Whereas the National Historic Preservation Act, legislation intended to preserve historical and archaeological sites in the United States, celebrates its 51st anniversary in 2017. Whereas historic preservation is an effective tool for managing growth and sustainable development, revitalizing neighborhoods, fostering local pride, and maintaining community character while enhancing livability. And whereas historic preservation is relevant for communities across the nation, both urban and rural, and for Americans of all ages, all walks of life, and ethnic backgrounds. And whereas it is important to celebrate the role of history in our lives and the contributions made by dedicated individuals in helping to preserve the tangible aspects of their heritage that has shaped us as a community. And now, therefore, I, Thomas Hart Watson, Mayor of the City of Owensboro, do hereby proclaim May 2017 as Historic Preservation Month and call upon all the citizens of Owensboro to join their fellow citizens across the United States in recognizing and celebrating this special observance. I would ask that Gary, you please come. Would you like a picture or where you might get from? Okay, there we go. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Gary Adams, 1519 West First Street, Owensboro. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for this proclamation. I'm the Vice Chair of the Historic Preservation Board for the city, and you can see all the wonderful things that are happening downtown, and the Kentucky Buggy Factory at 9th and J.R. Miller Boulevard being turned into affordable housing. These are all results of the Historic Preservation Program nationally, statewide, and locally. So thank you very much for this proclamation.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate you. The next proclamation is a proclamation for Older Americans Month. Those of us that are in that category pays close attention. Whereas we fully realize and appreciate the great importance of our senior citizens and their past and present contributions to our community. And whereas many of our senior citizens continue to be vital and actively interested in all phases of life in the community. And whereas we publicly acknowledge these many contributions and responsibilities to older Americans and pledge our support to this group in a greater and more efficient manner. Now, therefore, I, Thomas H. Watson, Mayor of the City of Owensboro, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2017 as Older American Month in Owensboro in recognition and appreciation of this community's seniors. Like, as Dane. There you are. Okay. Do you have a picture made with me?
I'm sorry?
Do you want a picture made with me?
For sure.
Okay.
As long as you don't charge her. Oh, yeah.
Uh-oh. Just trying to keep me in here. Now, will you talk to us a little bit about it? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Is it over this way? Okay. Okay.
Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Dana Peevler, and I live at 4883 Oak Meadow Court here in Owensboro.
Thank you. You have the floor.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate y'all inviting me to come tonight. It's exciting. Older Americans Month is an opportunity for us to share a little bit about the Monday Center and what we do there. Been told we're the best kept secret in Owensboro, and I want to fix that. So our mission is to provide and coordinate services and social activities for seniors that enhance their dignity, improve their independence, and encourage their involvement in the community. We do this a number of ways. We provide a number of programs. Y'all are all familiar with Meals on Wheels, I'm sure. But that's just a fraction of what we do. We serve probably 175 meals a day to home-delivered folks. And then we do another 150 meals a day in 6 locations throughout Davis County. We serve meals at Park Regency. We do Whitesville, Adams Village. We are at the Monday Center. We do that at Roosevelt House. And I'm forgetting one. Garden Grace. Sorry. Thanks, Heather.
So you're saying there's more places than the Monday Center on 2nd Street to have your services?
There are. There's 6 locations throughout Davis County. What they tried to do was we have a focal point. The Elizabeth Monday Center at 1650 West 2nd Street is the main focal point where the majority of our activities take place. But we also have 5 other locations throughout the county, making it more accessible for the senior population to get to. One of the things that we're committed to doing is making sure that all of our services are accessible to everyone within the county and even the surrounding counties. Several of the folks that come and participate come from Hancock County, Muhlenberg County, Ohio County, all over. So we do bring a lot of people into this community. We do a lot of recreation, do a lot of billiards. Joe Mason is here with us today, and he helps run our pool room. Probably about 600 games of pool gets shot every month by about 70 folks. So we have a lot of things going on there. But there's more than just pool. We do all kinds of benefits and fundraisers and dances, line dances, different recognitions, lots of different recreation type things going on at the Monday Center. We have, the category is called health promotion, but really what that means is just exercise, healthy nutrition, any kind of disease prevention. We have yoga and Zumba, and we have a workout room. We have folks that come and present on pulmonary disease. We have all kinds of different programs that are offered every single month, and they're free. All of what I'm sharing with you today is either completely free or for a suggested donation of $1.50. We provide transportation to and from any location that we offer services at, or if someone just needed to go to the doctor, the dentist, get their hair cut. We've taken people with their animals to the vet. So we provide transportation all over this county, and that's for a suggested donation. It's just $1.50. And that's for a round trip. I don't know about y'all, but I can't go anywhere for $1.50, even in an economical car. So we provide education. Right now we got a Spanish class going on, and nutrition education, and computer education. I didn't know how to use I didn't know how to use my Kindle. So we invited the library, and they came and showed us all how to use our tablets and things like that. I still don't know how to use my Kindle, but shoot, I don't even know how to pronounce it. We have telephone reassurance where we call folks and just check on them daily. You know, how's it going? You know, do you need anything? We call them on a snow day just to make sure that they don't need a bunch of groceries or any, their heat's working, their oxygen tanks are working. So we send volunteers out to the home. They go out and sit. Some of them had one guy just wanted somebody to watch Perry Mason with him, so that's what the volunteer did. We act on folks' behalf. We are trained to know how to identify somebody that might need prescription assistance, food stamps. They might find out that we might learn that this individual was scammed. Recently had somebody that got scammed out of $4,000 here in Davis County. She told her senior center. She didn't tell her family, she didn't tell anybody, she told us. And so we were able to work with the Attorney General's office, at least get it stopped. And we do those things at the Monday Center. And again, I mentioned the transportation. We do all of this, like I said, by having 6 locations throughout Davis County, but we have community partnerships. We partner with the Y to offer our water aerobics. We partner with the library to offer our Kindle classes. We partner with Owensboro Community and Technical College for our computer classes. Brescia helped us with our Spanish classes. So we've got a lot of community partnerships that we work with. We have I don't know if you all are aware or not, but we offer a food bank at the Monday Center. We get food given to us through some of the folks that attend the Monday Center, and any day of the week, folks can come in, and if they need a week's worth of groceries, we'll go to our food pantry and pull it out for them, and it's all shelf-stable food. It costs nothing. Costs nothing but a little bit of our time. We deal primarily with folks that are age 60 and over, but we are not going to deny somebody that's under the age of 60 if they have a need. We have a backpack program that's in partnership with Bellevue Baptist Church and Owensboro Christian Church. At the end of the month, the last Thursday of the month, those 2 churches provide about 36 meals. Well, no, it's 36 times 5 meals, because they do a 5-day supply of groceries that they deliver themselves to homebound folks. The intent is to maintain their nutrition through that last week of the month when money might be running out. Want to dispel one myth, though. The Monday Center is not just for folks that are low income. We serve every socioeconomic group. And a lot of the programs that we offer are attended by a very diversified group of folks. We absolutely are committed to making sure that anybody that has a need, we do what we can to meet it. And that's why we offer all of our services at little or no cost. And but again, we offer all of our services are available to anyone, regardless. And then we have a Pearls. It's called Pearls. It's a program to encourage active, rewarding lives. And what it is an in-home based counseling service where we partner with 2 mental health organizations. It's overseen by a nurse practitioner who we deploy counselors to the homes. They make 8 visits over a 6-month period of time for free. in the senior's own home, identifying and treating mild to moderate depression. We do this for nothing. We got a grant through the hospital, and we're able to pay them mileage. We're able to pay any associated costs related to that. And what Medicare or Medicaid doesn't cover, the grant's able to pick up and pay for. And so, we're pretty proud of that. We started that here in Davis County. It's now spread to all 7 counties in the grad district. So what impact does this have? Well, it increases mental and physical health among the aging population, ultimately decreasing costs to the community. The more you're able to help someone remain independent, and I guess they call it aging in place, they stay at home, we're able to put that money back into the economy. They participate in the arts, they participate in social engagements, civic engagements, they volunteer, and that's something that they can't do when they're in a facility. And so investing in the seniors, not only does it maintain their mental and physical health, but an elderly friendly community, it strengthens us all. If you listen to the wisdom, if you pay attention, there's a lot to be learned, there's a lot to be gained from those relationships, not just for them, certainly for all of us. And so if we do it right, I don't know, there's a statistic I did find a few weeks ago, and it kind of, by the year 2050, the elderly population will literally double. It'll double by 2050. This is 2017. It might look like it's a long way off. It's not. It's really, really not. So when folks consider moving to our area, they very well may look at what we have for our seniors. And I'm tasked with, and we're tasked with at the Monday Center, making sure that we meet the needs of folks that grew up in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. That's a huge, broad, vast scope of people. And they have very diverse wants. They have very diverse needs. And so what we're doing at the Monday Center is we're developing programs that speak specifically to all of those groups. And we need to hear from you all. What would you do down there? We take trips all over the country. We're hoping to do some international travel here in the near future. So we're invested in you and working really hard to make sure we have everything for our future of seniors. And I mentioned the diversification of our programming. That's going to be our focus. We have to make sure that we have all of the right programs in place to grow into. We know we're looking at decreased federal and state funding, and so we're developing mechanisms for sustainability. So you're going to see some new and innovative things come out of the center. And yes, we're still going to be working with our local leaders and our community to develop and locate and hopefully someday move into a new facility, one that hopefully is one level that we can all, maximize the usage, maximize the usability of it. So if anybody has any questions, that I've got plenty of, well, I don't know if I got any answers or not. But I appreciate you letting me come, and that's all I really wanted to talk about.
Well, thank you very much. I know the school was built in 1929, the Lee School that y'all are operating in, so
Yeah.
it was kind of remodeled a little bit in the 60s. So you've got a few challenges ahead of you, and
We do.
try and work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate all y'all done, everything you do.
Okay, item number 5 is consider the approval of the minutes dated April 13th, 2017, and April 24th, 2017. Counselor, you said we could do them both at the same time?
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay. I need a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments from the commission? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Item number 5B, consider board appointments, please. Reappoint Ed Allen and Terry Woodard to a 3-year term expiring May 16, 2020 to the Historic Preservation Board. The International Bluegrass Music Museum Incorporated Board of Trustees appoint Tom Watson to fill the remainder of a term expiring November the 23rd, 2017. The Medical Control Authority for Emergency Services and Ambulance Board reappoint Richard Peach to a 3-year term expiring May 19, 2020. The Owensboro-Davis County Building Code Appeals Board reappoint Ted Lawley to a 4-year term expiring May 6, 2021. Owensboro-Davis County Industrial Development Authority reappoint Bill Parrish to a 4-year term expiring April 9, 2021. The Regional Water Resource Agency Board reappoint Harry Roberts to a 4-year term expiring June 30, 2021. And the County Board of Assessment Appeals appoint Benji DeWitt to a 3-year term expiring June 30th, 2020. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments from the commission? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Item number 7, first reading of an ordinance. Mr. Ray.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. While he's looking for it, I forgot to recognize Senator Joe Bowen and Representative Matt Caslin, who are here with us tonight. We appreciate your interest in this community. Thank you all very much. Go ahead, Ed.
Thank you, Mayor. The first is Ordinance 8-2017, entitled an ordinance closing the 2 remaining sections of the alley, 10 foot in width, lying between East Parish Avenue to the north and 14th Street to the south. The north section beginning at the East Parish Avenue boundary and extending south a distance of 86.95 feet, and the south section beginning at East 14th Street boundary and extending north a distance of 180.9 feet, and further providing for a dedication of a public utility easement in the north section at the request of the Owensboro Medical Plaza LLC. Introduced and publicly read for approval, introduced and publicly read on first reading May 15th, 2017.
Thank you. City Manager Bill Parrish, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Mayor. This is an alley on the central east side of the city at 1200 Breckenridge. It's the old white building that used to be Owensboro Heart and Vascular Building across from the Cancer Center, the McConnell Cancer Center on the south side of Parish. There's an alley that runs east to west on the south side of that building. Owensboro Health wants to close that alley and do business there. The adjacent property owner concurs. Owensboro Health requested it, and it saves maintenance costs for the city, no longer having to take care of that alley. Therefore, staff recommends it.
Thank you. First reading, no vote. Item 7B, what we're going to do on this, 7B all the way through 7F, we're going to let council go ahead and read all these ordinances, and then at the end we'll have comments and go from there rather than do each one individually, if that's okay with everybody on the commission. Okay, Mr. Ray.
Thank you, Mary. Mayor, all of them relate, of course, to the budget. First is Ordinance 9-2017, an ordinance adopting and approving the annual budget of the City of Owensboro, Kentucky for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2017 and ending June 30th, 2018, and appropriating the revenues to the various departments of the city as set forth herein. Introduced and publicly read on first reading May 15th, 2017. The next is Ordinance 10-2017, an ordinance amending Chapter 16, Article 1, Section 16-1, Insurance License Fee, and further amending Chapter 16, Article 2, Sections 16-22, 16-23, 16-24, 16-25, 16-26, and 16-35, occupational license fees of the Owensboro Municipal Code, to raise the rate of the insurance license fee effective July 1st, 2018, and raising the occupational license fees and net profit fees of the City of Owensboro effective July 1st, 2017. Introduced and publicly read on first reading May 15th, 2017. Ordinance 11-2017. It's an ordinance amending Chapter 25, Article 2, Division 2, Part B, Section 25-56, parking violations specified to increase fines for parking violations effective July 1st, 2017. It's introduced and publicly read on first reading May 15th, 2017. Ordinance 12-2017, an ordinance amending Chapter 24, Article 3, Division 2, permit, Section 24-61 and 24-63 to include clarification language related to street cuts and to provide for a $50 fee for a permit to construct, reconstruct, alter, remove, or replace any sidewalk, driveway, street curb, or gutter, and any combination of the aforementioned on any public property or right-of-way. Introduced and publicly read on first reading May 15th, 2017. And lastly, Ordinance 13-2017, an ordinance amending Chapter 3, Article 2, Section 3-30, expiration date, fees due and payable, and 3-31, fees generally, to increase various fees for alcoholic beverage licenses. Introduced and publicly read on first reading May 15th, 2017.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Sherry, can you bring that up and can you pass those out? Two areas of budget discussion tonight, Mayor and Commissioners. The first is I'd like to answer the Chamber and others who have raised questions about this budget, and then discuss changes in this budget from the last presentation. Rather than going through the entire budget, merely present the changes. To start with, let me align myself with the Chamber. No tax increase. I vote with you. I don't want the tax increase. I know, Mayor and Commissioners, you don't want the tax increase because you beat me with everything short of a stick to keep it from happening. And we've worked the numbers to get it down as far as we can. But this slide shows the historical reality of where this city is right now. Regardless of how you say how the city got here, this is the city's fiscal condition as we look ahead. You can look for the past 5 years that we have drained the city reserve and we have gotten it down to a much lower level. This is not a projection. This is the reality that's been reported in the newspaper. Now, while only one budget year at a time is actually budgeted, a good organization always plans and looks ahead to the future to avoid reactionary responses to tax requests. Good organizations look ahead. We forecasted expenditures greater than revenues the last 4 years. This should come as no surprise to anybody in Owensboro, Kentucky. But each year, voices said, it'll turn next year. It will be better. It'll finally start to turn next year. 4 years, and we continue to take in less than we spend. Now, the M&I reported on staff forecast. Unless you've been away for the last 4 years, it's hard to understand the surprise or lack of concern until now about this budget crisis that we face. The signs of financial distress have been clear to anyone who lives in Owensboro. Even though with each year's budget, some would say it will be okay next year, we know that wasn't the case. Now, I want to respond to the Chamber's comment that this is the largest tax increase in city's history. That I don't know. I can't tell you if it's the largest. But I can tell you it's the longest period of time that the city has ever gone without a property tax increase. Those dollars stayed in the pockets of everyone who owned property. Unlike the public school system, who raised their property taxes 30.99% in the last 20 years, the city has raised theirs 4.88% in the last 20 years. Unlike the public school system, the last 5 years saw an increase. The city has not shown an increase. There were no complaints then about the city budget as it drained down as we did not raise taxes. But like the Fram oil filter from years ago, you can pay me now or you can pay me later, we all saw the cost of government outpacing revenues. We budgeted expenditures to match those property tax increases. No increases were taken because we were told it will be okay. As a result, we will lose through 2021 $14.2 million with no reduction in spending during those years leading up to now. OMU, RWR rates are up, school property taxes are up. This may well be the largest tax increase in Owensboro's history because we went the longest time without a tax increase rather than taking piecemeal increases for the last few years. There are no complaints from our organizations or individuals about no tax increase or about the spending growth. We just kept moving ahead. But the result, the reality is, the numbers are what they are. That's what the numbers look like. a steady eroding of the reserve while spending more than the income that was coming in to produce it. Warnings were ignored. Now, the Chamber also addressed a steady staff's projection of $42.7 million budget deficit over 4 years. You'll recall, however, on the 13th of April, you already reduced that budget deficit to $32 million, yet the Chamber reports it's $42 million a week later. It's important to know the right numbers. The right numbers of the 4-year budget deficit projected at $32 million by the city staff after the commission did work to reduce it. Some continue to suggest this is a short-term issue, that return on investment coming soon, right around the corner, will kick in and save us. The problem is mid-range in its nature. It's 7 to 10 years before that return on investment will come true. We have seen occupational growth in the TIF areas, but both of those TIFs will be activated sometime this year. That means that the revenue we've been seeing in the occupational tax will stop, will pour into a TIF bucket. That bucket will then spill over sometime over the future to do work in those TIF areas, like building roads on 54, putting lights in, sewer systems, etc. Or downtown, you'll see growth in the TIF bucket, not to the general fund, to do things like replace the lights on the Blue Bridge. Now, these are great long-term investments, mid-range investments. I believe they are good investments, but they're not going to correct our deficit in the short term, as some would say. Alorica, for example, we have to pay them $250,000 a year once they activate to bring those jobs to Owensboro. Was it a good idea? I believe so. But those funds will not go into the city general fund as long as we're paying that. That's what brought them to Owensboro, Kentucky, vice Nashville, Tennessee. That's part of the reason. Large annexations such as Myers and Menards, what we call mega annexations, for 7 to 10 years, we give up the revenue growth that was touted as saving the general fund in the short term. We give it up for 7 to 10 years so that it can build the roads, the lights, the infrastructure to support it. A good mid-range to long-range investment. It's not going to help our general fund in the short term. Now, a great long-range investment, but not much help now. Now, let's talk about 4-year forecasting. You'll see that this is a 1-year budget by the time I conclude this. It's not a 4-year budget. It's a 1-year budget. But I will point out that good governments, smart organizations, even those outside of government, do conduct long-range planning and base their decisions on it to avoid large tax increases in the future. The Government Finance Officers Association says as a best practice, we should be looking 5 to 10 years in advance. We're looking 4, we're a little deficient. That is to avoid, see the insert, those shortages that we forecasted. We said were coming. Police and fire professional organizations call for long-term financial planning linked to operational planning so that you can plan what your police force will look like in 2 or 3 years rather than reacting as we're forced to do today. You can see that insert still rides in that slide. Other organizations call for long-range financial planning. The Kentucky Chamber says adequate and consistent long-term funding for transportation projects. The Kentucky Chamber also says look beyond a single 5-year plan. The Small Business Administration says you should have a 5-year plan of income and expenses. And Mr. Martin, you said in 2015, it is imperative that the city develop a long-term strategy for revenue growth to refrain from reactive tax increases that we're seeing today. Even though this is a 1-year budget, it would be foolish not to continue looking ahead in order to avoid those reactive tax increases that 2 years ago we said were not necessary. Now they're more than necessary as required to meet the reserve fund that's floating away. It's been suggested the shortfall is only $2 million for the next fiscal year. That discounts replacing the reserve fund back to meet the GFOA standard. But if you just look at a few items, you'll see additional cost of $6.69 million next year. Items the commission agreed were necessary. The top 2 were foisted upon us. The police and firefighters pension fund, it's funded this year. It's empty next year. There are no dollars to fund it. The convention center, we used sanitation interest to buffer that cost. That interest has gone down. We'll have to pay the $390,000 on the convention center. You see the cost down the line. There's a $6.69 million additional cost. So the shortfall is $32 million, not $42 million as reported. But more importantly, a one-year shortfall of $6.86 million, not as reported by the Chamber of over $11 million. Be aware, it's 6.86, not 11. Now you'll see later, bold commission action on your budget. The shortfall has been further reduced tonight to $28.015 million over that four-year forecasted period, though we will show you a one-year budget. These are the cuts, an overview of what we've done to trim this budget. Aiming for one-to-one cuts is requested by the Chamber. Some were unacceptable, such as Craven's Pool, but bold action has already been taken. But the real money in city government is in people. We're in the service business. When a house is on fire, when snow is on the road, when a child is in a city pool, it's a city employee that has to be there. You need city staff. 70% of what we do is in the business of people in the general fund budget. But one for one doesn't envision the cuts we've already made to keep this government afloat over the last several years. 10 years ago, when I took over this job as city manager, I found what I recall was a bloated city government. We cut out 28 people from our staff. That's saving $2.28 million a year. Why did we do that? The forecast. We looked ahead past 1 year. We saw what was coming, and we said we can make those trimming now in an efficient manner. What we're looking at is any additional cuts we're talking about now are not efficiencies, they're cutting things out of government. Now, government is about priorities. There's never enough money to go around. When we say that we should do things to avoid this current fiscal crisis, there's never enough money. So where you spend your money indicates what's important to you as a community as represented by your elected officials. This is the general fund budget, which is $51.7 million out of a total city budget of $115 million. Now, by department, starting with public safety at the top, you can see 44% of that general fund budget is in the business of police, fire, and central dispatch. And that goes all the way to capital transfers, minor painting and concrete work at $65,000, representing less than 0.1%. Now, further cuts to limit tax increases will require specific direction from the public to the commission to the staff of what's important and what's not. Not something generic or amorphous, something more than we should cut. Now, in deciding priorities, you might, for example, say in the yellow items, let's not cut public safety, let's not cut police and fire. Or street work, repairing of roads or clearing of snow through our engineering department, street department. You might say, let's not cut them. They represent us in disaster recovery. Our debts have to be paid. That's off limits. Community development, where we spend $193,000 to leverage almost $600,000 in federal funds. Most folks would say good return on investment. Let's not cut there. Local funds are leveraged in federal housing. So if you fence those funds off, that means there are only $22 million available for further cuts. We would await the public and the commission's direction for further cuts. But I know, Mayor and Commissioners, you've been through this budget and beat me almost with a stick and gotten it to where I think you believe is right. Now, there's concern that higher taxes will drive growth out of the city. That hasn't been the case with higher OPS taxes in the last 20 years, nor the IPLF that was introduced here several years ago. And while Utica is a lovely place, my children live there and I like Utica, businesses generally prefer location as a deciding factor of where to go, as a key factor in their decisions, especially new businesses, for example, that we're seeing downtown on 54 in South Fredica. We know that Alorica and Boardwalk were influenced by location, by being down on the river in the activity, things that were happening. Not to mention the amenities that city offers that are not available in, and I love Stanley, I love the rule setting, but those are not available in Stanley. The decisions are made based off of location. Now, I don't take higher taxes lightly. Will have to pay them myself and have argued for years that we're spending more than is going out the door. Unfortunately, I don't have a vote in that matter, and I've advised the previous commissions and they voted the way they have. Because the Chamber's letter of 20 April didn't provide an exemption for police and fire, though I do see more recent ones do provide exemptions, it's important for, I think, our public safety officials to speak to the need for those increases in their departments. Chief Elam is up first, Mayor, if you don't mind.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners.
Good evening.
Salary cuts. There you have on the slide in front of you. What's my name? Art Elam, Chief of Police.
Okay, well, I didn't know who you was.
Okay,
Chief, you might want to go back one. I think you jumped one ahead.
okay, I'm sorry.
Anybody want to know who you are?
Yeah. Okay, the additional 7 police officers are very significant. There has been confusion about the need for additional officers. Yes, it is related to the TIF and the annexations and expansions out on 54. However, I've repeatedly indicated that manpower studies that we did in 2015 using 2014 data suggested and recommended that we add 8 officers. So even adding 7 doesn't get us to where our manpower allocation studies suggest. We actually need 15. But so, you know, that should end that confusion. And I would like to say this. If the mayor, the commission, if you all said we would stop moving dirt on 54 in the TIF, I'd still say we need 8 officers based upon our manpower allocation studies and the fact that officers are running their tails off, responding to calls for services. Calls are being held left and right. And I don't know about you, but I don't like the idea of my family members calling and being put on hold or having to wait 15, 20, 30 minutes before an officer can get to them. And that's what's happening today, and it's been going on for a few years now.
Some overtime for the patrol guys too?
Yes, but even that, you know, some officers relish the fact that they get overtime and they want to pad their pockets as much as they can. However, you know, the more you work, and studies have shown, mental and physical exhaustion, your decision-making degrades over time. So, you know, when we have incidents involving officers, whether it be accidents or officer-involved shootings, I'm concerned about the welfare of the officer, obviously. Hopefully no citizen, you know, was taken out by an officer. But I'm also concerned with, was that officer working a 16-hour shift, or is he in 18 hours of his day, you know, because he's working overtime at such stressful levels? The pay increase, it has to happen. Every community around us that we compete with, whether it be the Kentucky State Police, Henderson, Madisonville, Davis County SO, we've lost officers to all of the above. And it's only going to get worse because neighboring communities that we compete with have already addressed some of these issues. In fact, KSP now leads the way. I mean, starting salaries, we're right pretty even. But after a year or two, Madisonville, you know, after a year, an officer in Madisonville could be considered as a senior officer, and his salary jumps from $34,000 to $42,000. Whereas Owensboro PD, we start off at $35,357, and we get a step increase of 1.25%. And I'm sure there's some accountants in here, but that's not very much. And if we're lucky, we could get a cost of living increase, which has not been significant over the years, that doesn't even compare to what's happening with inflation and things like that. So it's very important because we will continue to lose officers. I will tell you this, in 8 years, we have 49 people that are eligible to retire over the next 8 years, 49. And the financial impact that it has is, figure $95,000 per officer that we train that walks out the door, whether they retire or they leave to go to another agency. So those are concerns that we have to address. And we can't address them, you know, it takes a combination of things, money, additional staffing to lessen the load on some of the officers that are out there on the street.
And don't you have a little trouble recruiting now with all the nice publicity police get now?
Yeah, you know, and those things that we can't control, we are blessed in this community that we get a lot of community support because we are very active. But nationally, you know, police have taken a beating over the last 2 or 3 years, starting with the Ferguson incident. And, you know, so it makes it difficult. You know, young people nowadays at career fairs, when we ask them, hey, you want to be a police officer, they say, no, I respect what you all do. I'm glad we got you, but that's not for me because I don't want to be shot at. I don't want to have to shoot anybody. And years ago, I would have told you that, hey, my recruiting speech would be like this. I've been on the force for 25 plus years. I just hit 26 on April 22nd. But I've never had to draw my weapon and shoot at anybody. But in the last 2 years, we've been involved in officer-involved shootings, unlike never before. And that's a change in the culture, it's a change in people's attitudes towards police, and so it makes it very difficult.
And there's also been a change in the retirement system as well.
Absolutely. You know, I'm in Tier 1, which is, you know, a great plan. However, in 2008, the state went to Tier 2, which was a little bit less of a defined benefit, but it was still a defined benefit package. In 2014, they changed to Tier 3, which is more of a 401k type plan, and it's significantly less money. And I think Josh has some numbers,
Mayor,
you know,
can
to
I
support
add,
that.
Josh ran the
Yeah.
numbers for a police officer with 25 years in now versus a police officer under the new system. The difference in retirement pay is over $1,000 a month.
Yes. What that slide reflects here is just a graph of the different pay grades. And if you notice that OPD is in green, slightly above Davis County SO. But Henderson, KSP, and Madisonville far surpass what we pay officers. Now, what I would like to say, you know, you think Davis County SO, well, at least you beat them. Well, no, we don't. Davis County SO doesn't have to pay anything towards insurance premiums. They also
get the fiscal court or sheriff's department pays 100% of their health care. Is that
yes.
correct? Also,
they get an education incentive. So if they've got an associate's degree, and I don't know the specific numbers, but it goes up. If they go from associate's to a master's, it could be anywhere from $600 on up to like $1,200 additional every year. We've lost officers to Davis County SO, and one in particular said that was the reason. It was a no-brainer. Loved what he did, but hey, you know, if you can go there and make more money and respond to less calls for service, and I mean, who could fault a female or male officer doing that when you got a family and you want to go home every night, lessen the chance of injury or risk to yourself, and make more money. Again, if you talk about the necessity of the increase in officers, if you all recall, we had 109 officers allocated to the police department back in 2007, 2008. But 9 positions were cut in order to implement a reserve officer program. Part-time officers that retired and came back. Well, we had 10 spots allocated for reserves. We were never, ever able to fill all 10 of those spots. We filled 7 positions, and over time those people kind of faded out, left, and went to do other things. And today we have 2 reserve officers in patrol and 1 in CID. So we hadn't been able to attract those retirees back to the workforce. So that's created some issues for us. Now, what didn't happen, even though we had this plan to supplement, you know, staffing and things like that to stave off some overtime expenditures, it hasn't happened. So we're still responding to more calls for service today than we were in 2007 and 8 with less people. So that's why the manpower allocation studies suggest that we need 8 more officers. And let me tell you this, those numbers do not count our front desk officers. So really the number would be 11 because we have, you know, somebody manning the front desk every day. But I'm not asking for that. I'm saying we need the 7 officers and we need them today. And I can tell you the impact of a delayed decision that's happened is that we were planning on getting these officers hired and sent to the academy by July the 1st, or thereafter, August maybe. Well, since the budget was tabled, we couldn't reserve the spots, and so I actually called and had our personnel try to reserve spots for, August or September, even October and November, and they told us all those spots are full. So now the earliest, unless we are able to make some magic happen, the earliest we can get them in is January the 1st, 2018. So that means whatever's going on in the city of Owensboro, TIF or regardless, is going to be a strain on our officers because, they are flat worn out.
So when they start January 18, when do they get a car and a gun and a computer?
Well, they'll get the car. Well, they won't get the car until they get back, but it's usually about 12 months.
12
By the time, a 6-month hiring process, and then 12 months before they actually complete the academy training, the in-house training, the PTO, police training officer, where they ride around in the car for 16, 17 weeks. So roughly about a year before.
And so the investment in a new officer is, did you say like $98,000?
Yes, by the time they complete their training.
So retention is
crucial.
Crucial.
And expensive. I mean, if we lose the officers, it's very expensive. That's just money out the door.
Okay.
Would like to say this too, while I'm up here. It's like I said, our demands for police services. We respond to all kinds of calls, and possums in my yard or in my garage, everything you name it, we respond to it. But over the last few years, those calls have become more complex, and it takes officers a lot longer to deal with them. We do Western state transports for mental health reasons, sometimes 5 and 6 a day. And that's a 3-hour round trip for one officer. So we've got officers passing each other on the highway, taking people to Western State. And same thing with juvenile transports. We have to transport juveniles to Bowling Green. So, our job is not getting any easier, and we certainly don't have the numbers to address the concerns that we have. I said this before, a 2008 Project America study and FBI Uniform Crime Report data said the average number of full-time officers in the nation's cities was 2.1 per 1,000 residents. That would put us at like 123 with the number of cities that we have, number of citizens we have in Owensboro. And the one before that, Project America did a study in 2008 that suggested 2.21 to 2.34, again, 123 to 137. We're not asking for 123, we're not asking for 137. We're just trying to scrape by with 7 for now to see if we can continue to weather this storm.
They won't be ready till 19.
Right. So it'll be pushing, 2019 before they're ready, yes. Also, I don't know if you all read the paper or the Wallet Hub put out a report just last week, and it talked about the best places in the country, the best states to be a police officer. Kentucky was number 47. That's not good. And that was based upon salary, based upon income growth potential, and officer staffing and safety. So, we've got some issues there, but I'm proud to say I've been in Kentucky for 26 years now, and we have the best training. We're in the top 5 when it comes to training in the country. But it doesn't offset the things that police departments can't control, and that is the people, the commission. You all have the control over salaries and pensions to a degree, or what we have. So, and that's statewide. It's not just an Owensboro issue. That's Kentucky overall. The next slide, I've already switched. Talking about potential cuts. If we needed to, there's some things that we do currently, and we talk about 1-for-1. I would say crossing guards would be the prime example of something to cut. The police department is responsible for funding crossing guards who routinely don't show up, and the police officers actually have to go out to schools and cross kids across the street. Ultimately, that is a parent's responsibility, if not the schools. And I can remember a time when I was 7 years old, and I used to wear a hat and a vest and have a flag and let my fellow students cross the street. We've lost that in society, but now everybody expects the police to be there for everything. So that would be a cut, and it would save $30,091. We provide a service. The traffic unit does 709 escorts, whether it be funeral escorts or bridge escorts. We could cut that service out and put that on the private sector. The special events, we do numerous special events every year, and it taps into our overtime account. The city actually eats 75% of that cost. And the barbecue fest, for example, for years, the OPD, we paid $33,000 a year for the weekend for the barbecue fest. We didn't really get reimbursement way back when, but you know, since maybe about 2008, 2009, we started to have officers flex their time, reschedule, adjust their schedules. You know, a detective will put on a uniform and work Friday and Saturday night versus getting paid overtime. I think we are the only agency in the city that does that. So, but we do it to try to save money because we know that we need those overtime monies to fill the vacancies on the street, all the shortfalls that we have. We could shut down our crime prevention unit, which would take DARE out of our schools. We could shut down the Citizens Academy, close our accreditation unit. But you know, these are things that I think you build capital with our community being engaged and being involved. And so when we have situations that occur, you know, we've got the support. And if nothing else, it causes our community to pause for a second before they pass judgment on the police. Because, you know, we're out there providing a service, and we give it our all every day. Here's a little survey that I did, because early in the, you know, the budget process, there was some question about compensation, health benefits, and such. So if you look at the survey here, it says, you know, you are satisfied with the overall compensation package. 75% of our employees disagree with that statement. You know, the impact of what's happening in Owensboro right now is that violent crime has consistently gone up over the last few years. Criminals have figured out that we don't have enough people on the street. They know that officers are tied up. I personally worked the West 5th Street area for 7 years before leaving the streets, and I go down there routinely, and I'm rarely seeing an officer. And I'll tell you why. I listen to them on the radio because they're responding to calls all over the city, and they don't have time. I mean, because as soon as they come 10-8, which means they go back in service from one call, they've got another one waiting for them to go. So I drive down, I take the deputy chief with me, we drive around and try to be seen, but you know, that's just the state of what it is today, is that we just don't have enough people out there to do the job. And this is just the first quarter, comparing first quarter from 2015, 16, 17. You know, violent crime stats are up. And we want to continue to maintain that positive relationship or association with Owensboro. People, when I talk to them, they say, Owensboro's got it going on. We don't want to be like cities like Chicago and some other places that I get questioned about, and I won't say any neighboring cities or anybody close about, hey, you hear about, they got shootings every day over there. We want to maintain that positive outlook for Owensboro. And, but as long as our criminals know that, hey, we don't have the bodies on the street to deal with it, or the deterrent effect is just about gone when we can't be out there. This next slide talked about health care, because that was brought up, and I was curious myself. So it says, I am satisfied with the health care related benefits offered by my organization. 46% either disagreed or strongly disagreed with that statement. Some people are neutral, and I would suggest that those are the people that are on their spouse's insurance and they don't have the city's insurance. Strongly agree, I think that was me, but. Here's some headlines from 2017. Area officials see crimes increase. A standoff shooting shakes city's west side, in which an officer had a gun pointed to her head. where we say we need more officers. Shooting victim found in the street. These are things that are happening in our city. 3 OPD officers injured during Tuesday incidents, and I think that was during 4th of July at Kendall Perkins Park, where they shot bottle rockets and M80s and some very significant fireworks at police officers. And that's not a surprise. That's happened for years. But that's what we deal with. Just the fireworks have gotten more powerful. Man charged in an incident with officer has his probation revoked. If you see the 5 charged in OPD drug bust, one of those persons there, I won't call his name, but was on parole. And he actually was supposed to be serving like a 10 to 15-year sentence, but he was out on parole, and we get him again for the same crime, basically. So we got recidivist offenders out there. Legislators have enacted House Bill 463 that has an impact on what we do and what we can do on the street. Drug dealers, drug users get out and to reoffend, and it's like cat and mouse. We got to chase them, catch them, do it again, and sometimes they actually leave the jail before the officers do. So, talking about added stress on a police officer. Before I conclude my presentation, I would like for you all to hear from Officer Walling. If you come up.
I'm Officer Philip Walling at the Owensboro Police Department. Members of the City Commission, Mr. Mayor, thank you for allowing me to speak in front of you today. I'm currently a patrolman on day shift as well as one of the training officers at the Owensboro Police Department. I came here this evening to talk about the pay scale and the benefit package for the police department offers and how it impacts my family and I. I've been a police officer with the City of Owensboro for 10 years, and up until 2 years ago, my family has been on government assistance in the form of WIC. WIC is a federal assistance program for low-income families that have children under the age of 5. The basic eligibility requirements for the program is that the family must have a household income under the federal poverty level. The poverty level is determined by the household income and the number of children in the home. Even with my wife being employed by the hospital here in Owensboro and me being employed at the police department, we qualified for a WIC program for my first 8 years as a police officer. In December of 2013, my bi-weekly gross income for my base pay was $1,506. In April of 2017, my bi-weekly was $1,560. My family health care insurance in December of 2013 cost me $276. In April of 2017, my monthly insurance cost me $477. In 3.5 years, my pay increased 3.5%. My insurance increased 72%. If you go off my gross pay and subtract my insurance costs, you'll see I make $93 less a month now than I did in 2013. This is because of the large increase in insurance cost and the minimum cost of living raises that don't even keep up with the cost of living. I applied to KSP a few years ago because of the low pay that the city offers its officers. Although I had to withdraw my hiring process due to a family emergency, I did take the written test for KSP before withdrawing my application. Along with about 70 other officers and deputies from around the state that tested that day, I received one of the highest scores. I do not share this to toot my own horn. I share this because it shows how better trained and supervised officers are at the Owensboro Police Department. Other police departments such as KSP in Madisonville knows this as well. We currently have officers in the hiring process with other agencies as we speak, both those being KSP and Madisonville. We just lost one to KSP a couple weeks ago. In closing, I'd like to mention the police officers at the Owensboro Police Department haven't received a significant raise in almost 20 years. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
I just ask that you all look at one another and look around this room and tell me who else in the last 2 years qualified for government assistance. It's shameful that the police department, yes, and he's not the only one. Other city workers in this community also qualify for food stamps and other government assistance. You mentioned KSP, and I'm trying to tame a dragon because they actually get it. They understand. They're getting ready to start another abbreviated LEAP program is what they have, where they go and cherry pick from agencies across the state of Kentucky, rather than look for entry-level officers, they're going to have a lateral class where they cut the 24-week academy down to 12, but they take trained professionals like Officer Walling or Officer Sean Schroeder, who just turned in his stuff this past Friday to join KSP. They get it. They raise the pay, and they're coming after our people, and it bothers me. So I'm going to pass it on to Paul Nave unless you all have any questions for me.
Questions from the Commissioner? Commissioner
I don't
Smith
have any
Wright?
questions, but I want to commend the officer for having the courage to come up and say that, because I did not know that, and I don't think anybody in this room would have even thought that that would have happened to someone who was a police officer. So I want to commend you on that.
Thanks, Chief.
Good evening, Commissioner, Mayor. My name is
Good
Paul
evening,
Nave.
Paul.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. My name is Paul Nave, the 911 Director for Owensboro Davis County Central Dispatch. As you can see on the slides, our minimum staffing, which is a minimum that we have to maintain just to answer the calls and have the positions filled, is that we are 71% at minimum staffing on day shift, 50% on afternoons, and 78% on midnight shifts. That's consistent for the whole year. We're at minimum staffings. The stress that puts on the telecommunicators, you know, in any job you have, stress is inherent. I don't care if you're being a mayor, there's stress, and commission today, there's stress and you guys making a decision. But our stress is greater in the aspect of we're life and death every single day. No one wakes up any certain day and says, today's the day I'm going to have to call 911 for help. Never does that happen. And we have to be available and answer those calls when those people call, because we're the lifeline for those people. If it wasn't for us, they wouldn't get the fire and the police to respond to get them help. So that's crucial. I'm going to play a couple of calls, and I want you to listen to these calls, and then I'm going to elaborate on those.
Hello? What happened?
My daddy!
Honey, I can't understand.
My daddy!
Your dad?
My daddy!
How old are you, hon?
I don't know. I don't care.
What's wrong with him?
And then I'll play the second one.
Davis County 911, where's your emergency?
Yes, there's someone breaking in my home.
Are you inside?
Yes, he's coming in the window.
Are you alone?
Yes.
Is there any way you can get out?
No, not now. I'm in the bedroom.
Okay. Is there any place you can hide?
Yes.
Okay. Hang on just a minute, honey. Let me get somebody else in.
Hurry.
You at, honey? Okay. What's wrong with you, okay? She's on top. Only one person? Oh, okay. I'll let you know when they're there. But you still stay in the closet until they get in the residence. Maybe we'll talk to you because I don't want you talking. Okay? I'm okay. Long time when you're under this type of situation. Yes, right. Everybody said, but you stay where you're at. Are you okay?
I'll stop it right there. Those calls, I can't express to you what my dispatchers go through every single day in these calls. And like I said, not any day do you call and knowing that someone's going to break in your house and you're home alone like that. or that your father is dying and you need 911 to get you help. Those are true and accurate calls that happen in our community. However, it's more than stress that is concerned to me, is that our ability to give services to the people in the community that call to the 911 center. Every single call needs to have the same attention. 911 telecommunicators will be on the 911 call, and at the same time you have 2 or 3 calls ringing when we're at minimum staffing. And the stress level just elevates at that point because they're concerned, is that other call the same thing that I'm missing? Is it someone else dying? Is it someone else being broken into? Or is it a simple call of a rabid possum on their front porch, which we had this morning, an actual rabid possum on this lady's front porch. But to her, that wasn't an emergency, right? And we take that serious, and we sent the personnel to her house to help her out. So when they're doing that, we're at minimum staffing, they're on the phone, listening to the radio, answering the radio, and answering 2 fire channels at the same time because we don't have adequate staffing at times to handle that. So that's why I'm here to thank you for the 2 that you put into the budget. I know that you've cut 2 that I requested for out of the budget, and that's preventing me from building that bridge over the Delta to reduce this minimum staffing. And I'm working hard, diligently, being altruistically approach this to get more staffing in order to build that Delta. Because without the personnel to reduce the minimum staffing, I'm going to have more turnover. Right now, we're 11% right now, and just this year, since conception, we've been at 18%, which is right at the national average of turnover in 911 because of these things. So there's not one specific thing, it's inherent to the whole thing. So I'm giving you this information to let you know how stressful it is, how important it is, and that I'm going to be a bulldog. I'm not going to back down because we need more staffing.
Paul, you know, when you're funded for 20, I can't remember, 7, 5, whatever it is, and you only have staffing for 21 or 22, where does that funding go that you were going to get if you had 27 or 9 or whatever it is? Does it go into some fund, or, and how can you, nice grammar, Tommy, how are you trying to hire enough people? And is it just because we don't have them, or they don't want the job, or is the pay too low? Because you're getting enough money, the way I understand it, for 20, what is it, 7, 9? I forget now which
We have
one.
25 slots, and then
Right
you're adding
now,
us
and we're
2.
giving you 2 more. So that's funding for 27. You have 21 on job. So there's actually, if you have, that's
Currently we have 24 slots filled. We're down 1 slot as we speak. But just because they're filled doesn't mean that they can work the position. It takes me 6 months to 6 to 8 months in training in academy just to get someone. It takes a whole year, 11 months from the hiring start till we get them in the door till they can be independently working the position. So I'm in the same plight that the police are, just not as many months in the training. So to answer your question, a couple things. One is the money goes into, if I don't have the slots filled that you're budgeted, it goes into a surplus fund. That's what we're using the monies that currently. And the surplus fund helps in the aspect of buying a new CAD system, right? It helps in the aspect of buying equipment that is outdated, so that we haven't had to come back to the commission over the past 7 years and ask for any funding at all. Not one time have I come to you asking for additional fundings outside the requested budget request that we do every single year. We've not done that.
Do you manage the 911, or is there a board, or is there, how does all that work? I'm just curious. That's an awful lot of responsibility and stress on you. Do you have like the sheriff and the, I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to find out just how this whole system works then.
There's a contract that the city and county have entertained.
We had that combined 911, and we were going to do something, and then all of a sudden that went away and we have something else. Is that correct?
So there's a current contract with the city and county that regulate how 911 is, the conception of 911 since 2009. We are totally under the city of Owensboro, under the police department. The board is not over the operations of the 911 center, solely under the City of Owensboro and the Police Department. The 911 board oversees the recommendation of the budget, but all personnel and other facets of our operation are through me as a director and through Chief Elam and the City of Owensboro. If that answers your question.
Where's your help, is what I'm trying to find out.
Sure,
Does the board help you with these things?
I'm a solo one-man band operating the 911 center. Not that I do have liaisons to the police department and to the fire department if there's any issues that I'm able to facilitate through those. But on the day-to-day operations, there's no secretary, there's no deputy director. I'm the sole person operating off of Central Dispatch. And to answer your question, I do have dispatchers, many of them, that work 2 jobs. Right? They're working 2 jobs and coming in, leaving at midnight, setting up with someone, sleeping, and coming back working again because of the pay level that we have. So.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions from the commission? Okay. Surely you got some good news, Chief.
Well, I'd like to say I'd lighten things up a little bit.
I wished you would.
We're still in public safety. So.
That's right.
My name's Steve Mitchell, Fire Chief. Bobby, got that? You're no problem, even though you know who I am. Mayor and Commissioners, I'm proud to stand here before you today, say the Owensboro Fire Department is a lean and efficient department. Our staff does a tremendous job seeing how many times we can cut a penny to, and we're very creative and innovative to keep our budget down. Over the last 8.5 years, we've been able to track savings to the taxpayers of $630,000 in cuts and efficiencies, and we've brought in over $335,000 in grants. So that's a total of $965,000 that did not have to come out of the general fund or be charged to the taxpayer. However, please understand that any additional significant cuts in the fire department would involve operational changes and cuts in actual services to the citizens. There simply are no redundancies left. Our management staff and our personnel already complete multiple tasks and duties. Our budget proposal, as it is in front of you this evening for 17-18, has a cost per citizen, funding cost per citizen, $35 less than Bowling Green spends on its fire service for the current budget year. So obviously that'll increase when they get their increases in July. So we also had a couple questions brought up over the last few weeks, and I'd like to address those. We'll go back to the resource deployment and the staffing that we've been talking about. As you recall, the deployment study that we presented to you was available on our Facebook page and on our website at owensborofire.org. One question that came up, I want to say for clarification, was the ladder truck issue. Ladder 1 that was recently replaced was actually due to be replaced in fiscal year 17-18 due to maintenance issues. Ladder 1 covers central, north central, and west northwest portions of the city. We used the opportunity to save $200,000, it's actually about $250,000, by buying that a few months early. That funding was in the fleet replacement fund. Okay, this was not new funding, and it was not an additional truck. It was normal replacement. The replacement of Ladder 1 and our deployment study that has to do with the unit at Station 2 are 2 separate issues. Okay, so there was some confusion about that, so we wanted to make sure that that was clear. Another misunderstanding we'd like to clear up tonight was that the need for the addition of the East Side Ladder Service Company was strictly due to Gateway Commons, and this is not the case. The deficiency was officially identified during the 2011-2012 insurance audit. It was evident at that time that the continued growth in that area would give us over the threshold for this requirement. At that time, we put it in our long-range plan. We put it in a 5-year plan for 16-17. This would include doing the hiring of personnel in 16 and putting the truck in service in 17. However, when we saw the ladder 1 issue come up, and you remember we talked about this, we didn't want 2 ladder trucks coming due for this city 20 years from now. So we pushed this issue back to 18. And that was strictly looking out that far ahead, trying to take care of our city. So to be clear, all the current development that's already out there and the properties and Gateway Commons and any future development are both the cause and the benefactors of this planning process.
Chief, you know, I asked you a couple of things. One, could you relocate these ladder trucks in different spots and maybe lose 50 seconds or whatever in your call numbers? And you gave me a graph or something that showed me. So that's not an option, I guess.
Correct. We looked at every option. We looked at every station, moving things around, doing everything we could, and resource allocation made our percentages actually worse than better.
And then I ask you, why do you need a ladder truck, you know, if it's not built out there yet, you know, and they've got no big facilities, the 2 stories and stuff. And you explained to me that Menards and Meyer is flat, and you got to get all the way to the middle of it to put the fire
right
out.
Menards, Myers, of course we got the hospital out there, and so and that's actually this slide here. Okay. As we went through the study, this shows it breaks down. There's a 3-question process, and our goal was obviously we needed to get out there faster. We're about 6 minutes behind of getting the apparatus out there that we need. So basically what it boiled down to was more than 50% of the coverage area is outside the current zone. The current and future buildings require ladder truck response, and that critical facilities exist in that area. So that's what triggered the requirement. So the requirement was actually triggered a few years ago. Gateway Commons is just going to make it worse.
So has there been any opportunity to talk with the Davis County Fire Department about some shared responsibility in this area? Because they have a, don't they have a full-time fire department out there?
Yeah, and I'm going to mention this a little bit later, but the county does not have ladder trucks. And and talking to them, they are not interested in purchasing those. So I'd like them to buy our used one if they're interested, but I was already told that they're not.
And the truck costs $1 million, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
And it's a garbage truck, right?
So how much does a garbage truck cost?
Which frame?
About $300,000.
I mean, the frame and the chassis is a garbage truck, right? And then they just fix it up for a fire department?
So currently the fire department has our coverage for engine company coverage is about 76.86%, and our ladder company's coverage is less than 75%. Okay, your goal is 90%. All right. So in the nutshell, this means the east side of the city simply does not have the same level of coverage as the rest of the city. So that's over $569 million of assessed value, most of it commercial property, that is deficient in fire response. When Gateway Commons builds out, that's going to be over $800 million worth of assessed value that will not have the same coverage as the center part of the city. By placing Ladder 2 in service in 2018, we will improve to near 87%, and which is a lot closer to our 90% goal, and will take care of that $800 million worth of property. Another recent question had to do with the staffing needs. Currently, the fire department staffs at 75% of the required national standards, or 64% of what the insurance standards are. They're a little bit different between the insurance and the NFPA standards. If you take us out to that 90% coverage, what that would look like, we're actually only staffing now at 60% of national standards and 51% of insurance standards. The request before you today is only to staff that ladder truck at the 50th percentile of the national standards, which is 33% of the insurance standards. Now, we went through a lot of discussion, a lot of consideration of this, and funding was the main consideration at staffing that at only the 50%. So even though it will not be fully staffed, it'll still help us and get us part of the way where we need to be. So as your fire chief, I do not see placing the East Side Ladder Service Company in service as some type of option or some type of want. This is a necessity. This is needed to meet our coverage needs, and we just can't delay it any farther. To get this ready in 2018, this is the reason we brought it to you this year, just like Chief Elam talked about, how long it takes to get people trained and get everything ready to go. Okay, Mayor, just like you said, we looked at alternatives. We looked at reallocation, and it simply weakened other areas of the city. And I don't think that's our goal. I don't think that's what we want to do. So there's no other place to get this. The county does not have ladder trucks. Okay, so right now we're placing our firefighters in situations in the east side of the city where they have to wait longer to get the resources and the help they need. And we just can't do this now with the types and sizes of facilities we have in that response area. Now, we did also our one-for-one look and see what it would took and say if we agree there needs to be a ladder truck over there, but we're not going to add staffing to do it. How could we do that? So we looked at this, and this slide dictates that and go through it, but just to be real brief, we would have delays, cuts in other areas would delay obtaining water supply, delays in potential rescues. It'd violate our 2-in, 2-out regulations that we have to follow.
What's that mean?
You cannot put anybody in a house unless you have at least 2 people out there ready to rescue them if they go down, or to help with any rescues. Okay, so it's called 2-in, 2-out. It's an OSHA regulation that we have to follow. Fire department, just like police and anything else, we are heavy regulated by outside sources. To affect the staffing portion of our insurance rating, there would be things within the fire department we'd have to eliminate because we'd be moving people from other locations and other jobs into those jobs. So we would have to eliminate our EMS continuing education, tell the firefighters you got to go find that on your own. Right now we supply all the CPR, first aid for public works, transit, and all that. That would go away. We would have to reduce the amount of firefighter training and professional development we do, and we would have to reduce our community risk reduction, which is our fire prevention and inspections and things like that. That's just to name of a few things that we would have to eliminate. So a decision not to keep up with city growth or not to attempt to staff it has implications. These implications include increased insurance rates, possible increase in fire activity and fire damage, possible increase in fire-related injuries due to lack of prevention efforts. Not to mention the safety factor, it's your firefighters that run into burning buildings when everybody's running out, and we need to give them the resources they need. Putting our strategic plan and related budget proposal took a significant amount of planning. We've been working on this for a long time, a lot of study, discussion, and funding considerations. We have prioritized our needs, and we've only brought the very highest concerns to you in this budget process. So I hope that clears up questions that were on the deployment and staffing part, and I'd like to just touch on wages just real quick. We've reported this to you before, where our firefighters are 8.5% below midline to our comparables. And we recently checked all of our comparables. Their budgets are done, and they're all getting 2 to 2.1% increases. So that puts us at about 10% behind. So the 5% that we brought before you just is making up half of that deficit. So we're hoping that helps with our recruitment and retention, but Unfortunately, I was just told today we are losing another one to another fire department that's paying more in Indiana, and it's a smaller department, so that'll be 6 for me that I've lost to other departments because of wages and benefits. They're also going to pay lower health care costs there as well.
So
is there any
Chief,
questions?
Chief
Yes.
and Chief Nave, not to look in the rearview mirror, but this discussion just happened now, or has there been a discussion going on for quite a while?
Since 11/12 for us.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you. Any question from the commission? Hearing none.
Just want to thank you and Paul and all of your staff for the great job you do keeping our city safe, along with Chief Elam as well.
Okay, who's next?
I have Tim Ross to brief one slide, Mayor, if you don't mind,
Sure.
and that was there's a recommendation to cut the Public Events Department. We've already reduced his budget by almost $74,000 next year. We forecasted a reduction of $295,308 in the next 4 years. I just wanted to give you some of the consequences of actions if we cut that department.
Yeah, one of the suggestions was to eliminate Public Events Department and potentially roll that into the Parks Department. If that decision was made, it would be taking the community, different than fire rescue, different than police and first responders in the urgency of the need, but at the same point in the business side of a city, because that's what it is moving forward, you'd be going in the exact opposite direction of what you've done the last 6 years in building something. Parks Department has eliminated position that used to manage the permitting process for all the events that happen in community. When Making Strides Breast Cancer Walk happens, or GRADSA does their Buddy Walk and those types of things, obviously there's permitting that goes along with that, insurance requirements and support services, and that was what was rolled into this Public Events Department when it was created. So you can see some of the numbers there at the top, what the budget is. There's about $60,000 in sponsorship revenues that come in each year. The events that we as our department in the city create and manage, like the music series, July 4th, Air Show, Trail of Treats, in addition to a handful of ones that we partner with, like Monsters on the Ohio, like the Color Blast, like the Barbecue Fest, to create some economic impact and add to the quality of life in our community, which are the two things that this department was tasked with 6-7 years ago when it was created, and I'm proud that we do that significantly. I know some people debate the economic impact numbers on the state level, but if you take very conservatively about 130,000 spectators from those partnered events and the ones that we manage, if only 10% of everybody that goes to all those events is from outside of our community, which we know would be a really low number, we know it's much greater than that, but even if only 10% of them, it's creating an economic impact over $2.3 million. So certainly there's economic value in what we do. If the decision was made to dissolve it and roll the necessary things back over to the Parks Department, there would still be a subsidy there. You would eliminate most of the live music events, eliminate the air show, eliminate a lot of those quality of life things that helps organizations like the hospital retain and try to retain doctors in our community because they want a vibrant community. When I met with Alorica just a few weeks ago, they cut me off kind of mid-sentence to say, yeah, we know Barbecue Fest happens. We know July 4th is going to impact us, and that's why we picked this community as opposed to Knoxville, as opposed to Nashville, when we could be outside in some industrial place just kind of lost in the mix. We wanted to be part of Owensboro where there's things happening and there's an energy to what they do. And so if you eliminated it, obviously you'd be going backwards in the business development planning side of it. On the bottom right-hand side there, continuing at 60% of the city support, that would be something new. Currently, we have been, ever since I've been in Owensboro, the city had a policy in place to support some of those nonprofit organizations that have a 501c3. So when GRADSA goes and does their Buddy Walk, 75% of the staffing expenses for whether it's a street closure or mainly street closures or bringing down equipment for those, 75% of those costs were covered by the city as a way to help support that nonprofit organization and cover some of that cost for them in their fundraising efforts. And I understand the direction moving forward now for our current budget going forward would be that we reduce that support. We want to continue supporting them, but it wouldn't be at a 75% level of cost. It would drop back down to 60. And so in the next fiscal year, that would raise about $4,000 or $5,000 in additional revenues to help offset some of our expenses. And obviously, that would continue out for the next 4 years in the projection. So if the decision was made to dissolve the public events, there would certainly still be a subsidy. It would go backwards on the business side of what we've been trying to build. I would kind of equate it in my head. You might take it for a grain of salt, but lightly, basically saying, hey, Disney makes Main Street, but if you never have a parade down Main Street, or you never shoot fireworks, or you never have a band that plays, you don't have the ambience, and there's certainly not the people that are coming down there. And if you don't have the energy of what the events are that happen in our downtown and happen really throughout the community in Moreland Park, it's certainly harder for a lot of businesses to retain their employees here. And it's hard for the community to come together and have those free things like a July 4th that all the walks of life get to go participate in, or the air show or Trail of Treats and some of those things. So that's just in response to that one suggestion, Mayor.
Any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you, Tim.
Thank you,
Mr.
Tim.
Parrish.
I want to return now to the Chamber's one-for-one options. These are focused on workforce. The Chamber suggested that we could choose not to allow a COLA for our non-police and fire in the general fund of 0.3%. That would save $62,313 across the general fund. Now, only $42,000 of that is salary. The rest is in taxes, Social Security, et cetera. And you could also choose to take away the step from workers in the general fund, not in OPD and fire, and save $223,000. Employees are hired at a low level, but then over the years they get a 1.25% pay increase. It's designed to keep them here, so they get an increase up to, say, about 10%. They think, well, I might as well stay here. I'm locked in. I'm getting raises now. You could take that away. Now, I'm not sure that's a wise decision as a city. Like other chamber members, which we are, we have to be concerned about recruiting workers, retaining workers, and about worker productivity. And I'm going to call that the heart of the organization. How hard our employees work. To get that 110% out of employees, there has to be a level of compensation that's really fair. As a matter of fact, that 1.25 and 0.3%, 1.55 total, is quite a bargain. With 2.4% inflation and non-city government expected to pay expected to rise 3.1% next year, as reported by the Society of Human Resource Managers, you get quite a bargain here. Now, will your workforce, your potential applicants, seek employment elsewhere? How does our wage growth compare to those who would seek our employees? The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports in red. That's what the general trend has been in salary growth for the last 3 years and projected ahead. Now, the blue is where city employees are at. You see that every year city employees trail. Is it penny wise or is it pound foolish to continue this trend when we compete with workers, with chamber members and other folks in our community to try to get the best to work for the city? When we have 28 fewer employees than 8 years ago, we have to have 110% effort to survive. Is it good business to damage the heart of the workforce? Another chamber option is forced vacations without pay, that is, worker pay cuts through furloughs. You could require each non-police fire worker to take a 1 week off without pay. That would save, loaded, all of the taxes, et cetera, almost $108,000 a year. But street paving, the business of tracking down those who cheat on taxes, legal work, it all remains. Remember, we've already cut our staff by 28. We're getting 110% of the employees. And when you think about the impact on a family budget, if you're not concerned with fairness, think about recruiting, retention, and productivity when an employee goes home to a spouse and says, I have to take a pay cut this year because the city's in financial trouble. The heart of the workforce, you take it away or you hurt our recruiting and retention. So how do we compare with others for COLA and STEP to other government-type organizations? All of these organizations will receive a higher COLA and STEP. All of them either charge taxes or fees from our citizens, except for the Riverport. Bowling Green, who we always want to compare ourselves to, is a 3.35 pay increase. Henderson, 2.5. When I compete for CDL drivers, for accountants, for laborers, they choose where to work, and we're on a knife's edge about that future. I'll talk about more in later. But so how low is our pay? As you consider the Chamber's option to have the workforce pay for city operations with non-competitive pay, In the general fund alone, if a family of 4, that is only a city employee working, his spouse is not working, 2 kids, and I know there are dual income families, some that have no children, but if those were all considered as only the spouse working, 34 currently filled jobs in the city would qualify for food stamps, many of those for housing assistance. Now, what is the value of the COLA and the STEP to one of our road workers in Wayne Shelton's department at the lower end of the pay scale? $8.15 a week. And that's important to that worker. When I ask for his heart to go out in the middle of the night in an ice storm, that's important, his decision to answer the phone or not. This idea of having spouses take their own health insurance if they're covered by another employer is a great idea, which is why we've done it for years, as long as it's an equivalent type insurance to ours. Our personnel director has studied 28 different agencies in Owensboro, from private business, members of the chamber, to individual organizations, and found we are right in the middle of what we do for health care. Now, you could raise deductibles and make an extra $62,400 from our general fund employees, but again, after surveying all those companies, I think our employees would decide, do I answer the call? Do I work with 110% effort? We're at a competitive disadvantage with recruiting, retaining folks, with productivity, and we're going to make it worse. In some competition, for example, the sheriff's office, you heard him speak of, in one agency that we support here on the government side, where the director gets free health insurance, pays $0, that agency is funded by city government. Another chamber option is pay cuts for our top staff. If you took the top 10 city employees and their pay and cut them 2.5%, you could save $35,631 a year towards our shortfall of $6.8 million. You could take 5% and take $71,000 from employees. But just like police officers, CDL drivers, or accountants, I compete for the best managers, the best leaders, to get the best out of those employees that we don't pay all that well. It's especially important in a lean organization whose pay is no longer competitive, where our managers are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and who don't know what the meaning of a 40-hour work week is, or they certainly do know what it's like to lose vacation days, because they do every year. It's especially important. I predict threatened loss of experienced leaders to manage our lean operations. These are good times for business, bad times for city government. There'll be pressures to cut, and I think that if you cut those, you hurt the heart of the organization. Another chamber option, eliminate sick leave for leaders in the city, where after 10 years of coming to work, if you're under the weather, you get partial repayment for sick leave or half payout at retirement, whatever sick leave is in your bank. You could take that benefit from department heads and save $22,000 a year towards that one-year deficit of $6.86 million. You would really save $312,818 because City Attorney Ed Ray advises by KRS and Kentucky Retirement System, you must take that from all workers and not just the leaders. Another nail in the recruitment and retention and productivity coffin by asking more and paying less for those who answer the call in the middle of the night. All these options ask some 400 city employees to be double taxed. They'll pay the same tax that the city has to require of its citizens, and they'll also take a pay cut. That's not good. So let's look at the damage to productivity we already suffer due to turnover, leaving for better jobs. You heard the chief talk about it a minute ago. You look at our departments, and we have annual turnover from 8 to 27% in our departments. And at 4.8% unemployment, we have a red-hot economy in Owensboro. Bidding up wages, that will only get worse. The cost, it hurts operations. We're in the service business, snowplow drivers, firefighters. The cost of training for a police officer is $95,000. You bring to us lower productivity and ask the same amount of work. In fact, 7 of 15 departments are understaffed already. It's critical in the areas of CDL drivers, street, sanitation, transit, OPD. You can see the list. We are outbid by the school system, who also charges taxes, on bus drivers. They get an annual tax increase. We haven't taken it. Only 2 of 7 road workers in our street department has been here more than 1 year. So when you talk about experience in doing road repairs and getting to a heavy dump truck and pushing snow in the middle of the night, experience counts, and we don't have that anymore. And I think, Wayne, you had another employee tell you today he was going to, was it the school system for higher pay? Davis County for higher pay. Same type work, but higher pay. We can't compete because, Mayor, we have kept a lid on what we pay people to try to make this budget survive in order to avoid tax increases that the public, that the chamber has said is not necessary. Let me sum up this wage discussion. I am not the employee representative of the city. I am not the union boss or shop steward. My job is not to get the most for our employees. But there's a fairness issue to consider, and that relates to directly what my business is, relates to recruiting, retention, and productivity. Is it the job of general fund employees, minus OPD and finance, to finance this government through pay cuts? As projected 4 years ago, we knew this problem was coming, and these employees will take a double hit. Is it right for workers in management to bear that cost with no option, as many chamber members have, for bonuses in good times? I've said fairness, but it's really about recruiting and retention. Will these families these employees work for allow in a 4.8% unemployment economy their spouse to work for less and bring home less? 2 weeks ago, Mayor, in your office, you know, we got a text. An OPD officer was leaving for the Kentucky State Police. Today, we lost a grounds worker. I understand there's a firefighter that's given his notice, too, to go work in Indiana. And of course, beyond our control are the changes to the state pension plan that Chief Elam talked about, where $1,000 a month less is what a police officer will make under the new retirement program. It is getting harder and harder to recruit employees and retain employees for this job. The second point I would make is productivity. I care deeply for my employees, but productivity comes first. Ask them, they'll tell you. There's a 110% effort factor. Consider getting the most out of our employees is what we're paid to do. We're walking a very fine line while considering these pay cuts as offered by the chamber. We've already cut the staff by 28. We're lean. We've driven them to do more. There are more stormwater basins than 10 years ago, more road miles, more parks and green space, 2 TIFs to manage. Ed is building a bluegrass museum. We're demanding more for less, and we're getting it. And they do the work, not because they get rich here in city government, but because their heart is into it, because they know they're respected and appreciated. I've been in the military and civilian leadership business for over 40 years. If we cut their pay, you might ask the question, will we get the maximum effort each and every time we demand it from our employees? Will they feel respected and appreciated when we cut their pay? Ask an employee in the private sector, will you work for less and do more? Or would you seek employment elsewhere in this 4.8% unemployment economy that is begging for workers? Well, our managers who take to the streets with chainsaws on work crews during ice storms give 110% for less pay. They're good people. They may well do that. We cleaned up faster than Bowling Green in Louisville during the ice storm, and we're a small city by comparison to Louisville. Why is that, you might ask? 110% effort. Not the stereotype of government employees, but people give their heart, their sweat equity to this city. But they all have families to support. I need 110% effort with this small organization to do a big job, and I fear we won't get it. Finally, Mayor and Commissioners, were it so easy, we've already done it. Ask our employees. I am a harsh taskmaster. Is it so easy to cut pay and benefits without reaction? I would have done it. Would have done it long ago. I did so by cutting the staff by 28 employees. In my mind, the taxpayer comes first. But there are practical consequences of simply cutting pay. The KLC reported that a city our size should have 642 employees when benchmarked against other cities. Let me talk to you about one for one. We have 415 employees. That's because those folks work hard and break their backs for this community, and I fear this one-for-one proposal will damage that. Yes, we are managers, but we're more than that. My department heads are leaders. We motivate the team to get out and do more than minimums during difficult times like ice storms or normal operations because they give 100%. If we execute these options, if you take away this arrow from our leadership quiver, if you demand more work and less pay, I fear Newton's third law will come into effect. There'll be a reaction to this action that you take. Routine and emergency operations will suffer. Next, the Chamber recommended eliminating redundancies. I talked about that benchmark of 642 employees for a city our size. We have 415 because we've cut so many already. Is it our 2 city attorneys? Now, one of those is the assistant city manager. We get the benefit of a second attorney. Is it the 2 engineers? One does day-to-day operations while the other plans for major subdivisions, roads, etc. Maybe it's our 2 accountants who manage a $115 million budget in multiple funding sectors. I would challenge you, Chamber, or others, to tell me where the redundancies are and point them out. Now, a good recommendation to contract out city work was provided, and that's why over the last 10 years, our employee numbers have gone down. We've contracted out more. If you look at the pictures, you'll see, for example, that tree work is no longer done by the city. Tire work is no longer done by the city. Fences going up. We contract some of our engineering work out. We have 1 electrician on staff because we contract out some of our business. And we used to have in the Kentucky retirement system, 10 years ago, Candy, you'll recall, 10 years ago we had folks on city payroll who earned a retirement pension who went out and cut the grass. That is no more. That's contracted out. We've done that for the benefit of the taxpayer. Now, let's move on to the budget ordinance and the tax ordinance. How is this budget different from the 13 April budget we presented? First of all, on page 41 of the budget book, Parks Maintenance, your consensus was to sell the vacant park keeper's home at Chautauqua Park. That will save us $6,200 a year towards replacing the roof, air conditioning repairs, etc. Now, what that will require, that building is used now by the disabled American veterans 15 hours a week or so for counseling. That will require us to displace them and find another location. Mayor, commissioners, the staff pledges to you, we will find them an equal place and save that $6,200 a year. That will allow us to sell that building. OPD default savings on page 77 are noted. The staff, the chief has already talked to you about the delay in getting this budget approved. Has cost him time to get his folks there. That saves him $172,000 in salaries and benefits as we go forward. Page 89, Central Dispatch. This is your direction to hire 2 Vice 4 new dispatchers, saving $88,120 a year. Page 97, Engineering. We've adjusted the paving budget downward by $100,000. We came to you originally and said it takes 40 years to get to a road to be repaved in Owensboro. The goal is to get to 20 years. This gets us in the 35-year range. It's a modest improvement. It's savings of $100,000. Page 151, General Government. The ambulance subsidy has been removed. I will tell you, though, that current contract is 10 years old. When it was written 10 years ago, we had 3 folks bid. 2 services said, we need a subsidy to do this, and Yellow Ambulance said, we'll take it as it is, and they are losing approximately $250,000 a year. Chief Mitchell tells me that there is no other county in Kentucky that he can find that doesn't provide a subsidy of some kind, whether that's a cash subsidy or buying the trucks or providing service support. So we may well be back to you to ask for that, but it is out of this budget, and we will reduce sidewalk repair by $5,000. Page 169, agencies, the arts. The original budget cut the arts by 10%, or $79,829. This budget is your direction to cut an additional 12.5%, additional $96,978. Because of your bold action, Mayor and Commissioners, because of the stick you welded on the city staff, you have saved $678,603 from the already reduced from $42 million to $32 million four-year budget. These are not efficiencies. These are where you looked at priorities and said, we don't have enough money to go around. We're willing to make some cuts. On the other side, the revenue side, short of taxes, you have said you are allowing us to increase alcohol beverage license fees. They haven't been increased in 2 years. There's a charge for services to the general fund. When we provide services to sanitation and to transit, we provide legal services, finance, personnel services, et cetera. We'll charge them more. Tim Ross feels that with the growth in downtown, the growth on 54, he can gain another $10,000 from event sponsorship next year, just thus relieving the cost of the general fund. Services have gone up for nonprofits from 25% to 40%. We're increasing the cost for street cuts. That is when someone like Atmos goes out and cuts a hole in our street to do work underground and it has to be replaced. That fee was $25. It's raised to $50. If you look at accident reports, if you pull the officer off the front desk at the police station and have him go find your accident report, it was $1.50. We'll raise that to $5. Parking fines are being adjusted. We'll talk about in just a few minutes from Danae. She'll talk about that. They were last adjusted several years ago. These will be an adjustment to the $10 fines. And that house at Chautauqua Park that we ask you to free up and sell, we expect will generate at least $62,000 in that sale. Total non-taxable revenue increased by $115,000 because of your direction. So if you combine the expenditure savings and your revenue increases short of taxes, the net savings are almost $800,000 from the previous brief. That makes the new shortfall for this one budget $6,074,000. This budget is written for 1 year. This rate clearly requires further revenue increases or completely eliminating the general fund reserve. That is the city savings account for bad times. Same practice as 4 years ago if you were to use that. Originally, on 13 April, the consensus was to rely on the occupational and net profit tax alone to generate revenue. That was at 1.94%. But talking to you, you have decided that the best course of action is to combine an increase in the occupational net profit tax and the insurance premium license fee next year. The 1.85% and 10% old occupational tax rate that would have equaled 1.94. That is, if your 1.94 pure had been translated to occupational net profit and to IPLF, it would have been 1.85 and 10%. Mayor and Commissioners, you have driven that down to 1.78 occupational net profit and 10% IPLF. That is a 2 percentage point growth. Now let's look at how this works. At our revenue sources, you know, from page 4 of the budget book, we list all of our revenue sources. We focus on the top 5. Let's review next year's projections. The left-hand column is how we project to end in 16-17. The center column is the new 17-18 budget for each of these top 5 areas. The right column is an increase in dollars and percent of 16-17 compared to 17-18. This shows an occupational tax increase, a property tax increase that returns to the days of 4%. It shows no change to the OMU dividend. They pay 2.5% to us each year because they don't pay taxes as a private company would. We get repaid for our initial investment. It shows the IPLF no rate change because that rate change doesn't come into effect until July of 2018. Now the net profit increase, but not actual dollars. The rate increase, but not actual dollars. In 15-16, we came in $1.27 million under budget. We prepared the 17-18 budget off of the 15-16 budget because the other budget wasn't completed yet. The 16-17 results were too early to call. Note the growth in 54 and the downtown TIF areas, but again, those will activate this year, so we don't get that growth in the general fund, as was stated the last several years. Most of all, if we looked at this, there's only half of the gain that we would expect it to because they're on a calendar year, most companies, when they look at the results they get in net profits. Now, you brought the occupational net profit rate down by comparison from 1.85 to 1.78. This budget envisions raising the rate from the current 1.39 to 1.78. The impact on the median individual income is $1.66 a week, or 24 cents a day. On the median family income, $3.49 a week, or 50 cents a day. Now, how do we benchmark against our 19 Kentucky peer cities, ranging from Louisville and Lexington down to Radcliffe and Covington? You've lowered the rate to the middle of the pack. Property taxes, no increase in 8 years. It's been recommended by Moody's. You saw our credit rating slip because we didn't use this important and stable property tax method. The rate will increase from 0.2593 to 0.2603. The impact on the median home is $1.10 a year. That's too low to calculate on a daily or weekly rate. How do we benchmark against our 19 peer cities in Kentucky? Well below the average, below 40%. Net profits, the equivalent of occupational tax for a business, they'll be levied on those wages, but for businesses. The same increase to our citizens and workers in the occupational applied to our businesses. Net profits will move from 1.39 to 1.78. Comparison with peer cities, middle of the pack. Not scheduled to increase until July of 18. It's too late now. It requires 100 days notice before the 1st of July. Is a 2% increase from 8% to 10%, not covering health expenses. This is on the average house premium, the average 2 cars. You can see what the impact is, 90 cents a week, 13 cents a day. Where do we compare to our peer cities? Slightly above the average, but I'll remind you, 4% will drop off when the downtown bonds are paid off, returning us to the 6% or a below average level. Well, let's close this brief with a discussion of budget versus forecast. This is a one-year budget. Take a look at how the money comes in. Expenditures still exceed revenues for the 17-18 budget by $258,431. We have projected ahead. It's wise to project ahead. When we didn't take the advice of projecting ahead 4 years ago, you see where it left us. But this is a one-year budget that is $258,431 short revenues to expenses. But our argument is, it is worth the forecast time to buffer the amount of increase to level it out a little bit, because we think over time that will grow. If you look at the projected reserve for 17-18, the red line is the GFOA standard, what we should have in our savings account. At the end of 17-18, with this one-year budget, we don't meet that. At the end of 18-19, we project not to meet that, but the budget's not written yet. 19-20, we start to meet it. In 2021, we firmly met the standard if those projections are true. You have an option in any year to adjust the taxes up or down, to make more expenditure reductions, because this is a one-year budget. Note what we're behind. The bottom line, Mayor and Commissioners, you've critically reviewed this budget for 6 months. This has been the most transparent budget I have seen in 10 years. Mayor, you have forced the staff through 3 extremely difficult staff planning sessions, and it's worked. You've brought this budget down even more. You've left me with no desire for a tax increase, but a requirement for a tax increase, or to change what this city government does. And I would remind the public that you get what you pay for. And while I like to stereotype government, I always stereotype, the state and the federal government. My government, I know, is run lean and mean and effective. Mayor, that's our presentation today.
Thank you, City Manager. Any discussion from the commission at this time? Commissioner Smith-Wright?
Yes, Mayor. Being the longest person up here, or the oldest person, or whatever, I've been through all of the years of our regrowth downtown. And I was part of a group of different commissions that thought that instead of putting taxes on our citizens, that we would draw down on the reserve just to keep our citizens happy and just so that we could move this city forward. Because when I came on board, in my opinion, Owensboro was dying on the vine. And we have seen growth like we haven't seen before. And to me, it was worth it, even though I was one of those commissioners that thought we should raise taxes. And Bill can tell you, from time to time, I said, you know, we need to be raising taxes. We haven't raised taxes in 8 years, 10 years, whatever, because everything else is going up. But it was always the consensus that we did not want to raise taxes for our citizens. And so that's why we're in the shape we're in. I will take some responsibility for that, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but the fact of the matter is, I feel that our community our city is in a better place than we've been in a long, long time. We've got people coming to this community enjoying every single thing that we have. And there was a lot of time, a long time, that we had nothing. And so I just want the citizens to relax, breathe, and look at what we have, and don't talk so much about what we don't have. We have a lot to be proud of. We've got to make some adjustments, but when we make these adjustments, we're making them for the betterment of this entire community. And every one of us sitting up here have to pay those same taxes. We're not doing it to everybody else and we just get by free, but we have to pull in our buckle and keep this city moving forward, and that's all I got to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Glenn?
Yes, sir. As the second longest tenured member of the commission up here, I want to make one real quick statement, and that is every morning, mayors of cities across the nation get up and they ask one simple question. How can I make my city or community a more livable place where people want to come and work, raise their family, and basically become part of the community? And we have done so much. You hear a lot about downtown, and I want to commend Commissioner Coger as being an investor, Condor of being an investor of our downtown. But we've all invested in it as citizens. We had years of discussions. Remember the We the People discussions? You always hear, they just didn't ask me. Yeah, they did. They had 2 We the People sessions, and we spent hours talking about the vision and where we wanted to go. And the consensus was, pull the trigger and let's get downtown revitalized. But let's also address our flooding problems throughout this city, which we've done to a great degree of expenditure. You didn't even hear about that tonight. Over $10 million in flood control projects in this city, and I think that's a very worthwhile investment. The growth on the west side. Go over to the west side. There's retail growth now. That doesn't happen if we don't believe in ourselves. If we don't say this city is a great place to live, now let's affirm that mission and go forward. Does it cost money? Absolutely. Should we have probably raised property taxes a couple years ago? Absolutely. Well, when I'd go out, people said, you already raised my property taxes. No, I didn't. The valuation of your home went up. So the bottom line is, as Pam has indicated, we certainly, with OMU rate increases, RWRA rate increases, we didn't want to add to that burden. So we're reluctant. And I don't want to increase anybody's taxes because I know how hard it is for small business. I know how hard it is for working families. I totally understand that. And this is painful for me as a leader in this community to have to vote for any tax increase. But the bottom line is we'll be a better community because we'll reaffirm our police and fire and our first responders. We'll be able to get our streets and roads upgraded at a quicker pace. And more importantly, we'll continue the positive momentum that this community has become famous for, not only in the Commonwealth, folks, nationally. Look at all the awards and recognition Owensboro, Kentucky has gleaned in the last 5 years. That happened because of each one of us in this room saying, this is the direction we want to go in, let's march forward, and we did it. And with all due respect to the 2 gentlemen from the state, we had very, very little help from the federal government, and we had some help from the state, and we appreciate that help. But most of the hard work was on the backs of working people in Owensboro, period. And that's why fees and taxes had to be increased ultimately, and now's the time. And I'm sorry about that, but I'm not sorry about the progress, and I think we're moving in a very positive direction. I love living in this community. I love representing you, and I guarantee you we will continue to move forward. Thank you, Mayor.
I guess that $40 million from the federal government didn't help much.
Yes, we did. You're absolutely right. Senator McConnell did help, absolutely.
Okay. Commissioner Ferlotta, please.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
No one wants to increase taxes, especially not me. I mean, my gosh, I get heat from a lot of different directions, but I'm a working guy too. You know, I'm a business owner. I've been a chamber member for years, and you know, it's just an unfortunate situation. But again, to echo some of the thoughts from Commissioner Pam Smith-Wright and Commissioner Glenn, you know, there's been a lot of progress in the city, and we ran on a campaign. A lot of people are saying, yeah, you new guys have no idea. Well, we ran on a campaign of infrastructure, and that's keeping our police, our fire secure, our community safe, making sure we have responders to take care of those incidents that happen every day. We got to keep our sidewalks and our streets repaired, and that's one of those situations that the infrastructure suffers if we don't put the money back into it to make it possible for those things to happen. But being a working guy, you know, I'm always looking for the idea way of solving those problems. I get to work around some dynamic people, fortunately, that are willing to share their input. And we're working on some ideas and some things now that we can't talk about, obviously, but they're in the works. I know there'll be a better another day, but not today. We got to back up, keep our powder dry, and prepare for the next battle. We have to settle, unfortunately, sometimes. I kind of consider it settling because I don't want to raise my tax rate. No one does. But it's an unfortunate thing we have to do. So as we look, you know, I've asked our staff, hey, can we is there anything else we can do? What is the answer here? And they've done their job. They've given us everything we can look at to possibly make reductions. But, you know, we've asked for things like, are there other ways to do it? RFPs for vacant spaces and vacant lands that could be sold off to generate income. Acreage at the airport that's underutilized. There's a lot of things we can do, and we're still looking at those options, and those are things that we'll address in the future. But today, we've got to make a decision, and it's a decision that's a tough one to make. We appreciate all the input. Thank you, community, for doing what you do and supporting us in these decisions, giving your input to help us make the right decision. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Commissioner Condon.
Thank you, Mayor. I think beginning about 4 months ago, Mayor made a comment about us catching up with Bowling Green on their occupational tax. Well, it's a heck of a way to do it, I suppose. But what I would like to do now, and Angela and Danae put together for me a request. After looking through all of the funds that we have as a city, the one fund that jumps out as far as monies that can be either redone or reallocated is the sanitation fund. The sanitation fund of and in itself is an enterprise fund. It's locked up. That means, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Ray, but those monies can only be used in the sanitation fund for whatever expenditures need be. But what can we do? What we can do to try to lessen the burden of our residents of the city of Owensboro is to take that $18 and move it down to $14. 22.22% reduction is what that would be. Now, to most individuals, may not mean a lot. That $4 a month may not mean a lot. But to a young lady, 21, that has a child with very little support system, it probably means a lot to her. It also shows that we're attempting everything we can to help our residents as much as possible, to lessen that burden. Now, in other words, what is that? That means that that's a loan by moving monies from one pocket to another. I get that. I understand that. I also know that that only impacts our residents of Owensboro. That gets an OMU bill for trash. I get that too. But it is a way that we can show how much we have tried to be able to look at this. I would even go as far as to say this, that you reduce that rate from 18 to 14, but in the year 2021, you go back to $22. That's 4 years from now. What that would mean is then 4 years after that, the monies should be back in line. That doesn't include any type of fuel rates or anything like that, but it maintains the fund to where it keeps its base accounts for storm or anything like that is what it does. So for presentation purposes, Mayor, if the commission could please consider that. This is outside of the presentation you see today. Nothing is included or considered with what I'm attempting to propose here. So I will leave it at that. And again, staff, Angela, you worked on Sunday on this, and that's the truth. It's not a blown of smoke. She did this, and I know she did. And happy Mother's Day too, working on it. So there is, I see it. It's working out there every day. Our police, fire, staff, guys, we're trying to. Citizens of Owensboro, we're trying that too. With that, Mayor, I will leave it for further comment. Thank you, sir.
And thank you, Commissioner Condor. We'll kind of digest that the next 24 hours before the next meeting, if you don't mind.
I don't, sir.
You know, my comments are, basically, you know, there's some tax increases in here that, you know, I'm not comfortable with. I talked to Gavin today for about an hour. You know, it's pretty inconsistent, the premium insurance license fee. It's my understanding that if it's going to go up, whatever it's going to go up, a lot of times the people end up raising their premium, or they're out of pocket and they try and keep their premium the same. So, you know, I can't really count on that money until you know, you see how it goes. The occupational license fee, it's paid by 52% of the folks that pay it are outside the city limits. I've said from the very beginning that you know, all ideas are welcome. That I don't have all the answers, but just don't get mad if we don't use your idea. And that's what I really want to get across, that I can't tell you how long I've listened to different people that I really respect and different folks that have looked at this budget, and at some point in time the numbers are what they are, and I'm ready to move forward. You know, democracy really is you know, it's diversity of opinion but unity of purpose. And I think most of us got a pretty different opinion on how we ought to do things. I said in the Rooster Booster that the 4 guiding principles for me would be public safety first, economic development, controlled spending, and work towards a balanced budget. And I firmly believe that should be the guiding principles for all elected officials at some point in time. So as we apologize to those that think Mr. Doug Hoyt gave me a scalding today on an email that we didn't have enough time to go through the process and wait 2 more weeks. A lot of extenuating circumstances. We have a commissioner that's going to be gone for 8 weeks shortly. We've got a lot of people that had planned to go on vacation because this budget's usually over with a long time before that. So I appreciate your concern, but I think as far as I'm concerned, we've been as transparent as you possibly can be. I don't think that we've tried to hide anything from you. This is the opinion of staff. And at some point in time, you take the opinion of your staff. If it's bad, they get fired. If it's good, we're going to move on. It's pretty simple. That's the business world. So I take exception with what Commissioner Smith-Wright states, that this community was dead and dying in the water. When I got here in 08, or 0-something or other, 5, we were $2.3 million short. We spent the next 4 years digging out of a deficit and left you all to have an opportunity to spend $9.3 million. Now, we didn't build a bunch of fancy stuff, but at the same time, it wasn't dead. We were moving. We had a plan. We, the people, as someone has said, we had a plan that was paid for. So I love you to death, but I take exception to the fact that this place was not going anywhere. We were building a process for the next group to move on. So, yes, ma'am.
I didn't mean that you weren't doing anything. I meant all of the things that have happened because of what you had was doing. We were moving.
Yes, ma'am.
We weren't doing anything when I got here.
I agree. You were just, I understand. But, you know, the idea tonight is to give you all an opportunity to look at it. At this point in time, we'll open this up to public comment. I would appreciate, since it's 7:30 almost, that if you've got 15 people that are interested in speaking to the same topic, select a spokesperson, and so we don't have to listen, don't get to listen to the same ideas over and over again. As I said last time we met, I'd just soon have a colonoscopy as increase taxes. But if we're going to rely on our staff, and they've said the numbers are what they are, then we're going to move forward with this. My plan is to separate the 1.39, and that will go into the general fund. There will be a restricted fund for the additional increase in taxes. That will go into a fund that can't be used unless we run out of money from the 1.39. We're going to look at all the transfers that happen. That's the thing that confuses most of us at the very beginning, because if you look at this, Mark and Ed and some Gavin and Mr. O'Brien, I mean, if you took 4 or 5 people into your business and asked them in 90 days, I want you to create a budget that's $115 million with no accounting experience, and only a level of experience from their private sector, I think you'd have a little trouble doing that as well. And that's what you all asked the public, the elected officials to do. You get elected in November, you start in January, and by April you got to have a budget to manage this city. And that's kind of unfair, especially if you're not a numbers person. So, but we've thought it through, and at this point in time, I think the numbers are what they are, and I'll be glad to open it up for public comment. Please state your name and address for the record, and you get 12 seconds.
Mayor, my name is Tommy. my name is Tommy Watson, and I agree with you. Tommy, Mayor, and fellow commissioners here, so we're all in here together, okay? So this is not a anti-opposition to the establishment. I've lived here all my life. I've loved Owensboro. I've made a successful living, and I'm real happy. The reality of it is that we can't have everything we want. And by the way, I won't get what I want tonight here. But we can't have everything we want. It just doesn't work that way. Today I'm supposed to be in Washington, D.C. My budget doesn't allow me to go to Washington, D.C. Separate issue. But I want to show you what this is. I'll just show you what it is, and I'll come back to it. Bottom line, I had the privilege last week to meet with PVA relevant to property valuation, and long story short, here we go, raising the tax because Frankfurt mandates as well as OSHA mandates. And so we wound up getting the assessment raise of quite a bump, even with my protest, but I do thank them. I think they do a good job. The reality, I'll come back here again, and here we're going to have that raised assessment raised with a higher tax rate. At the same time, we looked at the insurance. I hate to say it, Gavin, but it looks like a good case to buy you insurance in McLean County. It's sad to say what I just said, and I'm not going to go to McLean County, but the bottom line is if you knew what that cost on the people that have any levels of properties in Owensboro, I think you do, it's sizable. But the reality of it is a dollar is a dollar. Now, I'm not a real good mathematician, but I do know there's 100 pennies in a dollar, 100 pennies. Those of you know a little further know there's 10 meals to a penny, and you have 1,000 meals in a dollar. But here's where you go over here, and you put it here, and you get another little tear of the dollar. And the reality of it is, when you get through, I hate to say it, but you're spending too much money. And the reality of it is, those that are in business or whatever, when you get through, when the day is done, and you're all said and done on that dollar bill, I don't know how much is enough, but I do know that as a citizen, I try to do my part. I call and say my sidewalk's collapsing in one lane. You don't respond. It's no problem. I got concrete people. They do it. I do it on Martin Way, riprap on Marlboro. It doesn't matter. I take care of it. So I'm not trying to give you a tongue lashing here at the same time. I don't mind doing it. Get it taken care of. But the reality of it is, I say this because I'm a taxpayer and I speak against the action tonight. I know you've got to do something. There's no doubt about it. Tommy, we could go back 110 years and put you as the police chief. No disrespect, Art. But the reality of it is, we can't solve tonight what needs to be solved. Nobody's had the guts enough to come forward to merge Davis County and city government. You don't need a mayor and you don't need a county judge. You need one. You need administration, all the levels and all the departments and all the heads. Again, can't clarify it tonight, but I'd speak my thoughts simply because that's the direction. Senator Bowen, 120 counties in Davis County. Kentucky can't afford 120 counties. We need 62 counties, whatever it is right now. There's things that we cannot resolve tonight, and I know my 3 minutes is up, but my purpose of this is to tell you when I get through on this dollar bill about all the taxpayer, and again, I'm speaking to the taxpayer themselves. Pretty heavy, and I pay a fair amount of taxes, but I know you all do too. And the reality of it, there's a common denominator, is we want what's best for the Owensboro. The only question or comment I would make for tonight would be that you shelve this and not make that decision. I know it takes 2 readings Wednesday night, because when you get through, go back to the drawing board, see what else you can do. Raise the parking fines, whatever it takes to do it. I don't have the answer. I haven't been a part of it. But when last week, with my privilege of the PVA, back here tonight, insurance, occupational tax, all of the above. It's hard on a small business. I'm a small business person. I'm not large by any means. But the reality of it is that I understand where you're coming from. I do ask that you shelve and not take action on it this evening. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Who's next? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Wade Jenkins, 3415 Marycrest Drive. As I stated, I'm Wade Jenkins, Chamber Board Chair, and a very proud member of this community. I want to say good evening to the mayor, the city commissioners, city staff, and to our Owensboro community. I want to thank you for listening to our concerns and for revisiting and hearing from us and for not passing a 4-year budget. I want to thank the fire and the police and emphasize that we oppose taxes that impact working people and small businesses. We hope that our questions have helped raise a new transparency that has resulted from our questions. Also, am a little disappointed in the fact that we've only had from Monday to Wednesday to finalize this budget. I would ask that we wait a little longer so that we have time to digest this. Thank you for your time.
Who's next?
Yes,
State
my
your name and
name's Robert
address.
Higdon. I live at 3220 Lewis Lane. I'd like to ask Mr. Parrish if them 26 people retired or passed away, or how did he get rid of the 26 people?
Mr. Parrish?
I'm not a commissioner. I'm appointed staff. Those 28 folks were done through attrition. So whenever an employee was about to leave, either because they were fired, because they retired, because they just left the job to go somewhere else, that was when we restructured it. It took us about 6 years to go completely through it. We're saving $2.3 million a year. I think that's
Yeah. Well, it looks like to me that most of these commissioners wasn't up there at the time but one. It looks like to me that our problem goes back 8 years ago, that we couldn't manage our money, is what it looks to me like.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Who's next? Yes, sir.
Dr. Ron Sanderson, 335 East 21st Street.
How are you tonight?
I'm doing good.
Good.
I've looked at the city's revenues and expenses for the last 10 years by month. I actually did a study last year for the EDC.
Keep your mouth towards the mic so
sorry.
the people
Yeah.
at home can also hear. Thank you.
So I did a study. I'm not sure the proposed tax increases are going to have the effect you want. For instance, the insurance license tax, when it did double in '09, the tax revenues remained fairly flat,
Yeah.
because you're going to get that substitution effect with people leaving. Property tax, the elasticity of demand on that tax is at 0.92 right now. So there's a little room to increase it a touch, but too much more, and you're going to see some flight from the city as well. I think the other problem here is that there's kind of a misunderstanding of what economic growth really is. Economic growth isn't increasing GDP. That's just expenditure. In the Keynesian equation, it's both income and expenditure. It's at the same time, so it confuses people. But economic growth is getting more output with fewer the same amount of inputs. That's really what economic growth is. And so I've heard lots of not so correct presentations around town, and just myths. For instance, yes, cities did start in the 12 to 1300s, but no, cities didn't cause economic growth. We actually still just live together suffering on $3 a day from about 1200 to 1800, 1760 to 1800, give or take. And that's when the fact occurred, as we economists call it, where we've increased our growth to $137 a day. Now, that growth wasn't caused by downtown development plans, planning, regulations, tax cuts, anything else. Deirdre McCloskey, one of the great economists, modern economists, would call it bourgeois dignity or middle-class dignity. It was caused by letting people have a go, getting rid of burdens of government. That's what causes economic growth. It's what's allowing India and China to catch up to us right now in 2017 as we see an inversion worldwide. And we need to get that spirit back. The planning mentality is really where our problem is going to be. We are not going to see, these are challenges, and we're not going to see these things resolved until we stop trying to build a field of dreams. Let everybody build their own field. Thank you.
Could I ask you a question?
Yes, certainly.
In your solution, when you say let everybody build their own field of dreams, is that's your solution to, I mean,
yes,
expand on that a little bit, 'cause
well,
I'm intrigued with this thought
economies
process.
grow best, as we'd say, by spontaneous order.
Mhm.
You know, that is, it's great. Walmart already knows what I need. They're planning on it ahead of time for me, or any other business. And it's that spontaneous order that we need to adapt. It's allowing government to have spontaneous order, not the reverse. You know, you can't, as Adam Smith, and it's no, I think, accident that in 1776, with the Wealth of Nations, we saw the fact emerge that we finally realized. You know, you used to have institutions. Back then, roads were private, right? The New York subway system used to be private until it was seized. All successful operations without the use of government. And I think nowadays we take a lot of things for granted that we say we need government involved for, but there's much more creative solutions than that, and we don't need that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Who's next?
As your resource in the community, I'm always here to help.
Yeah, why don't you send your email address to Leslie, so I like to sit down and make me smarter.
I can do that.
Who's next? Do we have someone else? Uh-oh.
Yeah.
A real bean counter now.
Yeah. You know, I was...
Name and address, please, sir.
Oh, yes. My name's Larry O'Brien, and I live at 5117 Pleasant Point Road, Philpott, Kentucky.
City or county?
I live in the county.
Okay, go ahead. But you work in the city, right?
But I work in the city, and
boy.
I pay property tax in the city, so I have an interest. And, you know, I think what's so upsetting to all of us is that y'all didn't plan. I know Bill Parrish kept referring to if we didn't plan now for the future and look at it over 4 years, what happened 4 years ago? I mean, why didn't we have a plan then? And if Bill was telling y'all, the commissioners and the mayor, that we needed to address this, you were spending the reserve, you were borrowing like crazy, you were transferring more money every year from the general fund to the debt service fund, you were using up our vision fund, and it was Ron Payne's fund, and now he's using...
No names, please, okay?
Okay. Well, he's using that money to pay these bonds because he's already said in his letter here it's a short-term budget issue. It's not a short-term budget issue. It's a long-term monster that we've created. And it's obvious every year that's going on what was happening, but nobody addressed it. That's why we're so upset. And now you got this police officer over here. He wasn't making enough gross, and he's definitely not going to make enough net after y'all get through taxing him, because you're going to raise his taxes, his property taxes, his insurance taxes, and everything, because y'all were reckless and irresponsible. And I'm sorry I'm upset and mad about it, but that's the way it is. Y'all did nothing. You didn't address it. It was obvious as to what was happening. I wrote about it 4 years ago in the paper that what was going on. Nobody addressed it. And the reason why you didn't address it is because you had one thing in mind: build the downtown and revitalize it at all costs, and it didn't matter what the outcome. But there's a lot of people making minimum wages in this city that are going to be hurt by this. And there's some of them that y'all built down there, like the hotel workers and the restaurant workers. They're making minimum wage, and they're going to be paying for this. And now you got the TIF. You used all your borrowing power up, and your ratings dropped, and the only way to keep going is you propose a TIF increase in downtown and a TIF increase out on 54. Now you got most of the money that where the growth areas are is not going to the general fund. It's going to pay back for these improvements. And so if you take a theater out here, Cinema Theater we're getting 100% of now, you move it out into the TIF area and we get 20% going to the general fund. And a lot of these other businesses are going to shut down out here on Frederica Street if they move out here where the growth area supposedly is going to be.
And your solution to this is what?
the solution is, I don't have a solution now other than if you want to borrow, you know, maybe you could refinance your debt and extend it out for a longer period of time, but you probably can't do that because there's penalties and there's probably your bond rating has dropped so much that the interest cost would be too much.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you're saying.
Well, I mean,
I'm looking for a solution. You've got a lot of, you know.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that you didn't address the issue when you're supposed to, and now
Use
we
a
got all
big
these
term.
problems. And you're raising the rates so high because you depleted your reserves, and now your tax rate's going to be higher than it normally would be had you addressed it earlier. And there's a lot of people that you're hurting by this. And it's not, in my opinion, it's not a short-term issue. It's a long-term issue. And the maintenance, we're paying $500,000 now to support the convention center, $1 million more cost for the Riverwalk, and you transferred now $1 million more than in 2011 to the out of the general fund to the debt service. It's now, I think, when I looked at it, $1.8 million, and it was back a few years, 7 years ago, 800,000, and so that's $2.5 million right there in just 3 items. And y'all want, and your revenue wasn't growing that fast.
Well, I appreciate your comments, Mr.
Okay,
O'Brien.
thank you.
Anyone else?
Bob Zimmerman, Owensboro. I'm on your side, Tom. Solutions. Have we heard, seriously?
Come on over and get in front of me then.
No. Have we? Maybe I didn't hear him. I've got one, if you'll
Okay.
give me time to say
Sure,
it.
you got 3 minutes.
Okay.
We're going to put the
Fair
buzzer
enough.
on you.
I like the economists.
Yeah.
The best, but I like you too. And that's basically what I think we're on the same wavelength. The critical money is police, fire, first responders, and I've been having an awful problem down at Gabe's Tower. And Chief Elam, I'm sure, has heard about the most current episode yesterday afternoon with 3 officers, about 6 officer hours. You have to look at it, not hours. There were 3 officers involved, and they were there about 2 hours, I believe. I hope you've heard about it. It was pretty stressful event for everybody. But this is just one of multitudes. So I'd like to read real quickly a paragraph. It's a 3-page letter from my attorney to Steve Lynn.
Hey, hang on just a second. Is that appropriate?
Mayor, this the items, it's not open public forum right now for the general subject matters. The open public forum right now is specifically on the items 7B through 7F, and I don't think that would be appropriate unless it's directly impacting on the budget discussions, the proposed tax changes, but we would more than happy to receive the letter into the record.
I appreciate that refinement because you're right. I'm a step ahead, and this isn't the general public. But let me just stay focused then.
Okay.
I would like to request with Mr. Ray and Mr. Lynn's approval for all police protection to be removed. And this isn't for me, is if I feel like I hope the chief heard about this yesterday. It's a serious, we're talking about life or death, not money. I have security upon Mr. Ray and Mr. Lynn's forcing it on me, government forcing, rather than being spontaneous and taking care of. So I'm going to take care of my own. I'm a solution now. Could I request that all police protection be removed from my property? Everywhere, as far as I've got 5 properties in Owensboro. So I want, and that'll save many, many officer hours due to the city government forcing me to do things that they can't really do.
Okay.
You say I can read a quick paragraph?
We'll take that under advisement, and that, what you're gonna read, it probably is for general, it's not pertaining to the budget, sir. And you know,
Officer hours, I think that's
Okay.
what the chief and Paul Nave, I think that's what we're talking about, is the city manipulating these agencies, and there's no question about that, and government intervention into private matters that's causing the weight on them. Thank you.
okay, Mr.
Hi. The very last thing I thought I'd be doing today was
You
standing
bring
up
your
here.
guitar with you?
No.
Oh, man.
Caught me a little short. My name is Brian Smith. I have property at 1693 through 1727 Thompson Drive, and I also own and operate Diamond Lake Resort out in the West County. I have just a rhetorical question. It doesn't require an answer, just some thought. And I've been here 12 years. I'm very proud of this city. I'm very proud to be a member of the community. My rhetorical question is, I wonder why we aren't imposing a county-wide increase in the sales tax so that we can collect tax revenues from visitors, from tourists, business travelers, things like that, rather than burdening the community. You know, we've built this beautiful place that is attracting tourists, and I'm seeing smirks.
Well,
and I guess I'm not the first one to think of this.
No, because I've called Frankfurt and I've talked to Senator Bowen. It's just not an option right now. Now, hopefully in the fall there might be an uptick in the interest level, but you know, our hands are tied, and you know, as far as that option is. I mean, I called Senator Bowen. I said, I'd be interested in raising the minimum wage in Owensboro to help folks, but it's not an option. We're limited by state statute on what we actually can do to try and generate.
Okay, I thought that the county had.
Well, the county might, but we're.
That's why I was posing a rhetorical question, because this body can't answer that question. I just wanted it up on the table.
I thought about that. There's no question about it. We just are limited statutorily on how we can generate the revenue.
Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you for coming. Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Hello, my name's Ann Dameron. And
really?
Yes. I'm going to say something facetious first. You could save some money by cranking up the thermostat on the air conditioner, because I'd about turn into a popsicle over there. But
we're burning up here if it's any consolation to you.
When I stepped back here, it's not. I mean, it's much warmer here than it is in the middle room. That's neither here nor there.
Mayor,
I had
could
two
we
questions.
Could we get an address? We need an address for the record, please.
I would prefer not to give my address after hearing the chief of police report on the crime rate. I'm from Owensboro, Kentucky.
That's fine.
I have two questions. One is to Mr. Parrish, our city manager. I think I heard you say that it would be 90 cents a week on average on the insurance.
Bring that back up.
I hope you're not asking me to bring it back up.
Bring that back up. It's 90 cents a week. That's assuming on the average house premium and the average two-car premiums, it would be about 90 cents a week.
Okay, I thought that's what I heard you say. Then I heard Commissioner Condor say that he had thought of a way to reduce the garbage by $4 a month, so that's a wash. But I just want to say this for you all to think about in the future. Anytime you raise taxes on property that's rental property, you're really taxing the poor, because the landlord's going to raise the rent.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, is that it?
Hi.
Oh,
Just
man.
quick, I think I have some insight. I might be of help. My name is Joey Conley. I live
You
in
might
Leno.
be of some help?
Okay. Sometimes.
Go, Joey.
108 West 19th Street.
Nice to see you again.
Good to see you. I have no problem paying more taxes. I just want to make sure they aren't mismanaged.
Ooh.
That wasn't a criticism. There wasn't an ooh. I just want to make sure. I think that's most of our concern.
I think that's
right?
that's my response as well.
But my thought is this, you know, I don't know if the 28 fewer employees now over a decade ago is net or just 28, because I was one of those employees whose job was gone through attrition.
Thank you
And
very
it
much.
needed to go.
Thank you.
I sacrificed
But look how well
myself
you're
for the
doing
city.
now, man.
I'm very happy.
Yeah.
I was going to leave anyway, so I'm, again, not criticizing. But if you look at the org chart 10 years ago to now, there are 3 extra positions there at the top, and you always know the ones at the top are the ones that cost a little more. Mr. Ross talked about saving the Department of Public Events. Is that what it's called? Which I'm sure is a wonderful event. But I did part of the job, the securing of the permits when I worked for the Parks Department. And it was just little me. And we've lost a lot of events since, like the Corporate Challenge. There have been a lot of events that we used to have that we don't anymore, even though we had extra leadership. And you had me for the low price of $34,000. So I'm not saying you should necessarily keep or get rid of it, because it's not my business. I just want to make sure that we are doing what we can, and we aren't keeping some positions because they're on the record when we can find other ways to do it cheaper for less. I worry that when I look at our org chart, it's more top-heavy than it needs to be.
Or what? I'm
Our
sorry?
org chart.
Organizational chart.
And I do appreciate the attempt to look at the bloat, and I think it's something every business should do continually. I just look at the advertised org chart a decade ago and now. To me, it just seems a little more top-heavy than maybe we can support now. That's all I have to say. It's always nice to talk to you guys.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. Anybody else? Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Andy Gamblin, and I live at 711 Kentucky Parkway. I've had a chance to ride with the law enforcement when I ran for city commission last year. And
as a perpetrator or just a citizen?
No, as a candidate and as a citizen too. And I think a lot of these guys, and not only them, but the fire department too. And I know we are in a tough situation right now. My solution would be freeze spending, and then cut taxes by 3%. If you cut taxes, that will help generate money back into the public. That's what we need to do. If you go back and look in history, John F. Kennedy, he did it, and it worked. Andrew Mullen, I don't remember the president, but Andrew Mullen, he was chief of staff, and the economy was bad, and Andrew Mullen said, cut taxes. The president did, and the economy turned around. Ronald Reagan, he cut taxes. Bush, he cut taxes. They said he didn't go deep enough. If we would just cut taxes, that would help us and freeze the spending. That's the solution.
The only difference is the federal government can print money. We can't print money.
Well, I mean,
and that's a big difference in your scenario.
Well, I'd still say if we cut taxes for businesses, it would help businesses.
I understand.
So look into that, please. That's what I'm asking.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
God bless you.
God bless you. $5. We need the budget. We need money in the budget. There's some money on the floor there. Larry left some. Or somebody did. Tony did.
Yeah, I'm Beth Wilkerson, 208 Whittier Drive, and forgive me, I am not much of a public speaker.
You're doing wonderful.
Well,
just
thank
get that
you.
mic a little close to you so the folks at home can hear
Okay.
you.
Well, first of all, I found it a little ironic that at the beginning of this meeting we had an Older Americans Month proclamation while proposing property tax increases and insurance tax increases, which will really affect seniors that are on a very limited budget. Last year, the cost of living increase for Social Security was, I think, 0.3%. In talking to some of my older relatives and some of my older neighbors, a lot of them got $3 a month, not much. Mr. Parrish referred to how important $8.15 was to some people. Yes, it is. You can go to one of Ms. Peebler's senior feeding sites and for $1.50 get a decent meal to sustain you. So yes, $8.15 is a lot of money. Just because the city needs the money does not necessarily mean that a lot of people have it to give. And I don't know what solutions there are. I just know it's really going to hurt people that don't have it to give. And thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you. My mom's 89. She ain't smiling at me either, so. Okay, who's next? Y'all been very gracious tonight. I appreciate it, too. Anybody else? All right, Counselor, what do I do to get to the next thing?
I think you're on to appointments or...
Okay, we'd like item 8A, consider personnel appointments. Mr. Parrish.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm asking the commission to...
Un momento.
We'll pause.
That's right.
Pause for effect.
You're going to earn me.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm asking you to consider the following personnel appointments tonight. Timothy Goff, probationary full-time, non-civil service promotional appointment to Assistant Finance Manager, effective May 21st. Christopher Webster, probationary full-time, non-civil service appointment, Systems Analyst Programmer, effective May 22nd. Alex Knott, regular full-time, non-civil service appointment, refuse truck driver, effective May the 9th. Timothy Young, regular full-time, non-civil support service appointment, laborer maintenance helper, effective May the 9th. Ronald O'Brien, regular full-time, non-civil service appointment, firefighter, effective May 16th. And Stephen Phillips, regular full-time, non-civil service appointment, police officer, effective May the 30th.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Did we talk about Tim Goff or not?
I was throwing spitballs at him all ago.
Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed, motion carries. This time, City Manager, do you have any comments left?
Nothing further, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, it's communication from elected officials. I'd like to start with the lady first, Commissioner Pam Smith-Wright.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
The only thing I want to say is that I appreciate the city staff for their hard work on this budget. It has been grueling. I haven't been doing as much as they have, but it's been on my mind for 6-7 months, and so I'm sure that they are worn completely out, and I want to thank each and every one of you for the job that you do for this community.
Okay, Commissioner Glenn.
The other item I think needs to be mentioned that hasn't is that we had a wonderful event this weekend, the Barbecue Festival. I want to thank all the committee that is involved with organizing that. I want to thank our city staff, sanitation, police, I saw a lot of police, fire as well, who were out taking care of our guests, and there were thousands of them, and the weather cooperated beautifully. So another great event, another feather in our cap as a community, and I just want to thank everyone who put the hard work in. That's a year-long effort to make that happen.
Thank you, sir. It does cost us about $50,000 probably to put that thing on with cleaning, police, and fire. So just a thought process. And if you're going to say burgoo, you got to say burgoo, man. You can't say burgoo, okay? say burgoo. I hear you.
Come on now.
I'm too tired. I'd mess it up.
Come on, Mayor.
Commissioner Condon.
I don't know if I follow that up.
I mean, I heard that, and I thought, bless his heart, he's saying burgoo.
Echoing the comments about the barbecue festival, it was great. The disheartening part is, our tradition with what has happened with the barbecue festival is having the cooking teams come from the churches. It goes back a long, long time ago, and we only had 4 this year. Kind of concerning to see that, and I've said it publicly for a long time that our barbecue festival is changing. I hope it doesn't lose our traditions, but it was a great event. People love it. I don't believe we had very many incidents out of the ordinary that usually occurs. If that's a correct, Chief, is that correct?
He was out of town.
He was fishing. He probably went fishing is what he did. But I do know he can play a heck of a mean bass, though.
Bass guitar, excellent.
Man, he was rocking that thing.
What else, sir?
Other than that, thank you all again, staff, everyone that came. Thank you so much for coming. Participate all you can, please. Thank you.
Commissioner Velada.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to echo what the other commissioners said, thanks to the staff for the hard work. It has been a learning process. Let's just leave it at that. New education. Just to echo something that was passed along, as staff is always working, I was passed some information that might help some of the senior folks. The Homestead Exemption Act is going up by $700 this year, so that hopefully will offset some of the grief that's getting ready to be faced by the inevitable. So thank you. Not pointing fingers, we don't judge by age, but again, some of the seniors out there
That's
might
some
like
good
to know
news.
that
Phone just hit the.
I'm telling you, that is, and that's what I say. Staff's always working. This was passed, and that's good news. She wish she could have said that because she's not on a microphone, but we are. So again, thanks everyone for your kindness tonight and your input. It does not go unnoticed, and that's all I got. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. I too want to thank poor Angela and Danae. I put them through the ringer. I said, what about these two columns? Do they ever going to add up? So thank you all. Bill, great brief. City manager, assistant city manager, assistant attorney. You know, the book says you can't serve two masters, but you do a pretty damn good job of that. So thank you all for coming. I got my heart broken the other day when one of my best friends' dad came up to me and said, I am so disappointed. I was dreading this thing tonight, but all in all, everybody was very appropriate, respectful, and I thank you. Staff, thanks for, y'all get comp time for this? Somebody shake your head this way, please. There you go.
Maxed out.
God bless. Thank you all, and as far as I'm concerned.
Is there any comments that a man can say? Ash?
Yes, sir. Help yourself.
Do what?
Yes, sir. Help yourself.
My name's Robert Higdon. I live at 32.
Oh, yeah, you're the one that tried to call me, wasn't you?
Yeah, I guess
Okay.
you need to get on food stamps because I've been trying to get a meeting with you for 3 weeks, and they said you had to have a part-time job, so maybe you need to get on food stamps.
No, I take care of people with limb loss. I don't need another job. I've got two big ones. Thank you very much. And your job is, sir?
I don't have a job.
Okay, go right ahead. Speak.
We're gonna have to do something about planning and zoning. I'm trying to build a house,
Oh,
and they're having me do something that I've never heard of in history. And I'd like to talk to whoever got to for what I've got to spend for a 10-year tax easement, and what the city engineer is telling me what I've got to do. I've hired 2 engineers, and they said that it's not fair what he's telling me I got to do, that it is nothing pertaining. This harsh ditch project that you've done, you might as well stuck the money in your general fund if it's not helped what the flood is supposed to do. So, you know, and I just wonder, you're here to serve the public, why you can't have a meeting with you. I've tried for over 3 weeks. Thank you, sir.
well, if you're going to ask me questions about planning and zoning and engineering, that's a useless meeting as far as I'm concerned. I'd have to get some people to come in and help me because planning and zoning is a difficult thing to manage.
Well, y'all don't have any control over them?
No, sir. All we can do is appoint people over there. They've got their own book. It's about this thick.
Well, if they appoint, whoever appoints them, they need to be kicked out and reappointed.
And you've been over there to talk to them in their meeting?
I've been fighting for 4 months
Have
trying to
you?
get a permit to build a house.
Well, I apologize on behalf of this commission, but we have no control over planning and zoning. They have their own regs, and what doesn't get taken care of by the city gets taken care of by the state. It's a difficult thing. Probably more complaints.
And I'm not the only ones ever complained about planning.
Probably
and
more
zoning.
complaints on planning and zoning than all other things combined.
Cannot understand, there is a lot of businesses in this town that would hire 1, 2, maybe up to 5 people, but they can't afford to do what planning and zoning makes them blacktop their driveway, put in bushes. You've made people plant bushes up and down 2nd Street and 4th Street that is dangerous when you're in a truck pulling across 2nd Street or pulling across 4th Street. And I've asked the city engineer to go look at them and cut them down, and there's no results.
Dang.
So I guess what you need to do is take a chainsaw up there at night and lay them open where you can see when you're crossing the street. Am I correct?
Probably the bad plan.
Bad plan? Well,
Yes,
what
sir.
do you do?
You go through, I don't have a solution for you. I don't know. They've got requirements for what you have to plant, and that's, I mean, I'm sympathetic to your problem. I just don't have an answer to it.
Well, what is your position in the city then if you can't take care of any of the
Why are
problems?
you being so aggressive towards me? I haven't done anything
I'm not
to you.
being aggressive.
Sure
I
you
just would
are.
like to know.
My position as the mayor, I'm not have anything to do with planning and zoning.
I understand that.
So what?
But you can't.
And I don't have a
talk to
chainsaw
them.
either.
Do I?
I don't have a chainsaw as well.
Well, I do have one, you know. But what I'm trying to get at, you are the mayor.
Yes, sir.
All right. Who do you contact to get your problems taken care of? You go to Evansville. I keep hearing y'all talking about Bowling Green, Madisonville. Why do we got to compare everything to other cities? Why don't we deal with Owensboro instead of comparing everything to Bowling Green, Evansville, or Madisonville?
Mayor, if I could,
Sure,
I
I'm
would
trying-
like to volunteer Wayne Shelton,
Oh.
his city engineer, to at least meet with Mr. Higdon and see where it goes from there, and then come back and we'll give you a presentation.
Okay.
Go see who?
Wayne Shelton, he's right behind me.
Right here. All righty. Thank you for your time.
Good luck to you. Good luck, Wayne. Good luck, city engineer. You guys work this thing out, all right? Bless his heart, he has been calling me for 2 weeks. Anybody else have anything to say? Y'all want to spend the night, or y'all want? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
By acclamation, we are adjourned.
Yes, sir.